Chapter 32-46. The world is deteriorating day by day, and people's hearts are no longer what they used to be. People have always been opportunistic and eager for quick success. Seventh uncle snorted. Even Confucian cultivators can't help but be contaminated. They gave up on the great magical powers of their ancestors and only focused on weapons. The sharpness of weapons, the heart of people, and the skillfulness of power can hurt the heavens. Although the flying sword is sharp, it is too frivolous. If people today are opportunistic, I won't take it. The reason why we Confucian cultivators are called Confucians is because we use words and literature as the foundation, qi and blood as the bones. This kind of magical power is the real magical power of Confucian cultivators. Xianxia was confused and asked curiously, could it be that reading words and literature can defeat the enemy? Why not? Seventh uncle said proudly. The mighty power of Confucian cultivators can defeat ghost qi with just words and kill evil spirits with a single word. See. Xianxia suddenly realized and almost lost his voice. I finally understand. Of course, at the bank of Liao River, Mo Jianli took out a small book. After opening it, hundreds of armor inscriptions bloomed inside. Weren't these armor inscriptions hitting the shrimp soldiers and crab generals like talismans? However, Mo Jianli didn't have enough energy, so those armor inscriptions couldn't exert more power, so they didn't show anything. Armor inscriptions. Green seal inscriptions. Gold seal inscriptions. Xianxia sighed in his heart. Yes, since the green seal inscriptions have earth-shattering power, and the gold seal inscriptions can also have the power of Buddhist mantras in the mouth of Buddha relics, then why can't the armor inscriptions? Oh, Taoist priest. You know the power of Confucian cultivators? Seventh uncle was a little surprised. Xianxia smiled and told him about Mo Jianli's book. Seventh uncle nodded slightly and said with a smile, I understand. The power of the armor inscriptions is passed down from ancient times. That book is the ancient imperial weapon of Confucian cultivators. It is preserved in some Confucian sections. It is one of the magical powers that I mentioned. What I said is also commonly used by Confucian families, but it is different. As he spoke, seventh uncle raised his hand and carefully took out a scroll from his bosom. He waved it in front of Xianxia's eyes and said with a smile, if I hadn't met Taoist priest earlier, I would have relied on this scroll if I wanted to rescue young Master Xiao from the hands of the bandits. This item. Xianxia scanned it with his divine sense and felt that this scroll was filled with a kind of overwhelming righteous energy. This righteous energy was like a sharp sword, and the scroll was basically unable to contain it. Can I take a look? Xianxia asked curiously. Of course. As seventh uncle spoke, he opened his hand, and the so-called scroll opened in the wind. Hiss. Xianxia looked at the slowly unfolding scroll, and his pupils shrank. It was a scroll that was 1 foot wide and 3 feet long. Inside the scroll, there was the word when written in a flamboyant style. This word was not the inscription armor, but the common language of the hidden immortal continent. However, the strokes of this word were like swords, and it contained a great righteousness. Instead of saying that it was written on the scroll, it was better to say that it was floating on it. The scroll trembled slightly, and the word seemed like it was going to fly out. Even someone as strong as Xianxia felt a kind of tyranny in his eyes, and a kind of suppressive fierceness came from the word. It was as if he was slightly unconvinced, it would fly out and attack. How is it? Seventh uncle smiled and said, Taoist priest doesn't seem to be an evil person. Otherwise, this scroll wouldn't need to be activated by qi or true qi, and it would automatically attack. If it was before, as long as I opened this scroll, the bandit leader would definitely turn into ashes in this word. Xianxia scanned the word with his divine sense, and a kind of strong repulsive force was born. He nodded and said, the power of Confucian cultivators really exceeded my expectations. This great Tao really is endless. I still have a lot to learn. Seventh uncle couldn't understand what Xianxia was saying. How could he know that Xianxia himself was also a Confucian cultivator? He laughed loudly and said, unfortunately, Taoist priest has already entered the evil path and is going further and further away. If Taoist priest goes into seclusion for another 100 years, you won't even see this word. It seemed that seventh uncle didn't believe Xianxia's words of seclusion for 100 years. Ha ha ha, it seems like that's really the case. Xiaohua didn't expose him and laughed as well. He watched Seventh Uncle carefully put away the scroll. There was no greed in his eyes. Seventh Uncle also seemed to have realized that his expression when looking at Xiaohua was a bit different from before. After all, with Xiaohua's cultivation level that could save Yu Zhongquan, it wasn't necessarily impossible for him to snatch this scroll. Seventh Uncle's heart, which had been worried for a long time, finally calmed down. After talking for a long time and walking for a long time, it was time to rest. The Yu family's guards had already prepared some dried meat and offered it to Yu Zhongquan and Seventh Uncle. Seventh Uncle naturally gave it to Xiaohua politely, but Xiaohua only smiled and shook his head. As for Yu Zhongquan, he naturally wanted to share the dried meat with Yuanya and Lu Yi, but he only saw the two shaking their heads. Yu Zhongquan was surprised and asked in a low voice. Lu Yi originally lied perfunctorily, but after hearing Xiaohua's voice transmission, he didn't hide it and whispered to Yu Zhongquan. Yu Zhongquan's eyes lit up and he looked back at Xiaohua several times. Xiaohua smiled and waved at Yu Zhongquan, hinting him to come over. Yu Zhongquan was also very generous. He walked over and bowed. Immortal Master, I heard that Taoists have immortal fruits that can stop one from eating for several days. I always thought that it was just a legend. Although I'm a great Confucian cultivator, after cultivating to a certain extent, I can also transcend the mortal world, but... Little Gongzi, Seventh Uncle smiled and said, I don't know whether Taoists have such things or not. But I know that Master has already cultivated to the point where he doesn't need to eat. If you cultivate diligently, you can also achieve it. Grandpa is so hungry that he's skin and bones. In my opinion, it's better to eat more. Yu Zhongquan said disdainfully. Little Gongzi. Seventh Uncle felt a bit embarrassed and said anxiously, How can you say that about Master? Xiaohua naturally knew Yu Zhongquan's thoughts. Now that he was very rebellious, not only did he think that his little wife who hadn't married him was bad, he also thought that everything in his family was bad. He didn't cherish anything that Confucian cultivators had. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given up everything to become a ranger. Hee hee. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out 2 spirit jujubes and handed them to Yu Zhongquan. He said with a smile, These things are just snacks for me when I'm not hungry. Hee hee, thank you, Immortal Master. Yu Zhongquan took them and immediately put them to his mouth. He seemed to have heard Lu Yi say that he could only eat them in small bites. However, he didn't eat them yet. He immediately handed the other spirit jujube to Seventh Uncle and said, Seventh Uncle, can you taste it for me first and see if it's poisonous? Seventh Uncle was originally very dissatisfied with Yu Zhongquan calling Xiaohua Immortal Master. But seeing Yu Zhongquan being so filial, the dissatisfaction in his heart had already dissipated. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Little Gongzi, if you like it, you can eat it yourself. Don't! Yu Zhongquan shouted. You came to protect me. If I accidentally take poison, how will you explain it to your family? You should eat it first. Okay. Seventh Uncle's eyes were a little moist. He took the spirit jujube and was about to put it into his mouth. Seventh Uncle. Xiaohua looked at the warm scene and said with a smile, If this spirit jujube doesn't have true qi, you can only eat it in small bites. You can use the Confucian cultivation method to refine this spirit jujube. Of course, I don't know if it's possible. This. Seventh Uncle was stunned. He classified Xiaohua as a swindler. Just now, he earnestly taught him for a long time. Who would have thought that at this time, he would actually take out a spirit jujube? Seventh Uncle knew what a spirit jujube was, but the Yu family was a Confucian family, so they were somewhat repulsed by Taoism. He always felt that using a spirit jujube was a heretical method. How could he take this kind of thing? Yu Zhongquan certainly understood what Seventh Uncle was thinking. He didn't care about it. He picked up the spirit jujube and took a small bite. While savoring the fragrance of the spirit jujube, he also felt the impact of the spirit jujube in his body. Wow! After a moment, Yu Zhongquan extremely exaggeratedly shouted, Seventh Uncle! If you don't eat it, you will regret it. This is even more delicious than the dragon saliva pear of Green Lotus Mountain. Hee hee. Seventh Uncle only smiled and said, If that's the case, why don't you thank Taoist priest? Yes, thank you Taoist priest. Yu Zhongquan hurriedly said. His eyes were still staring at Xiaohua's sleeve. Looking at his greedy appearance, this was the temperament of a 14 or 15-year-old youth. How could he be a rebellious youth who left home to travel without permission? I still have some. I'll give them to you together. Xiao Hua was somewhat amused. With a wave of his hand, he took out a small handful and handed it to Yu Zhongquan. But these things can't be eaten often. Why? Yu Zhongquan was wild with joy. He didn't understand why this Taoist priest, who he didn't know, was so fond of him. Xiao Hua said in all seriousness, "It's very simple. Because after eating these, you won't want to eat the food of the secular world. You can't fast, so in the future, won't you starve to death?" Haha, this kid knows. Yu Zhongquan laughed heartily. He felt that Xiao Hua's words were very interesting. He took these spirit jujubes and ran to Lu Yi and Yuanya's side, giving 2 or 3 to each of them. Xiao Hua looked at seventh uncle again. He had already hidden the spirit jujubes, so Xiao Hua didn't mention this and casually chatted with seventh uncle about Confucian cultivation. Seventh uncle seemed to have also seen Xiao Hua's extraordinariness. His words in the future were not lacking in respect. Of course, regarding the secrets of Confucian cultivation, especially the appearance of the Chong family's little miss, seventh uncle avoided them deeply. Xiao Hua couldn't ask more even if he wanted to. Very quickly, several days passed. Ahead of them, there was a fork in the road. One road went north, the other went east. The Sunhai Trading Company's caravan was going north, which was the capital of Jianghu country, and the road to the east was going to Bronze Pillar country. Xiao Hua naturally didn't want to go to Jianghu country's capital. He was somewhat anxious to go to Bronze Pillar country. He wanted to see the situation of the auction and see if there was anything he needed. Xiao Jian originally wanted to go to the auction, but now he had lost interest. He wanted to go to Jianghu country's capital to see the excitement. However, when he heard seventh uncle of the Yu family say goodbye to Xiao Hua, saying that he wanted to go to Jianghu country's capital to visit the Yu family's relatives, Xiao Jian immediately changed his mind. Ever since he met Yu Zhongquan, seventh uncle talked with Xiao Hua while sizing up the surroundings. Xiao Jian was immediately listed as a swindler by seventh uncle. Chapter 32-47. At first, seventh uncle was abnormally vigilant towards Xiao Hua, and he was even more aggressive towards Xiao Jian. However, after several encounters, Xiao Jian distanced himself from seventh uncle. Other than Yuanya, who would sometimes approach Xiao Jian to greet him, only Qi Jin would often strike up a conversation with Xiao Jian. In short, Xiao Jian was very lonely on this journey. It was as if he was walking on pins and needles. It was uncomfortable, as if there was a pair of eyes behind him that wanted to see through him. Now that he had the opportunity to get rid of these eyes, how could he not cherish it? After Xiao Hua and the others bid farewell to everyone, the one who was reluctant to part was Yu Zhongquan. Xiao Hua was really too good to him. Not only did he give him a lot of spirit jujubes, he even obtained a chant from Lu Yi for fasting. With Yu Zhongquan's intelligence, how could he not know that this was Xiao Hua's tacit approval? If Xiao Hua wasn't a Taoist cultivator, Yu Zhongquan would almost think that Xiao Hua wanted to take him as a disciple. Even the thought of Xiao Hua's little daughter growing up appeared in his mind. Looking at Yu Zhongquan and Lu Yi hugging each other as they bid farewell, Xiao Hua smiled. Since he met Yu Zhongquan again, would he let him slip away? It's just a family of Confucian cultivators. Once he recovered his cultivation, he didn't need to do anything else. As long as he gave Yu Zhongquan a pair of ranger wings, wouldn't Yu Zhongquan obediently follow him? Huang Yi, Huang Yi. Xiao Hua turned his head and looked at the depths of the sky. This Xiao doesn't know where you are, whether it's the Netherworld or Xiaoyu continent. This Xiao also doesn't know whether this Yu Zhongquan is the Yu Zhongquan you're talking about. However, this Xiao was able to meet him. This Xiao has benefited a lot from you. In the future, this karma will fall on him. If the 9 heavens were in the 9 heavens, Xiao Hua suddenly laughed. If the 9 heavens were in the 9 heavens, wouldn't Huang Yi have already flown into a rage? Yu Zhongquan's little wife was actually a descendant of the great scholar surnamed Chang, and not Huang Yi. Xiao Jian finally came back to life. He was no longer as lifeless as before. He urged his horse beside Xiao Hua and whispered something. Apart from a smile, there was respect on his face. He now understood that Xiao Hua was definitely an unfathomable Taoist senior. Not a spy like he thought from the beginning. Moreover, the word unfathomable was truly unfathomable. It wasn't the kind of word that he used to brush off others. However, after walking for more than 10 days, the surrounding scenery gradually changed. There were more and more low houses, more and more villages with smoke rising from chimneys, and even the road was much smoother and more spacious. Xiao Jian still didn't mention anything about the spirit jujube, as if he had never seen it before. Every once in a while, he would ask Xianxia to find some food for him to eat alone. Even his past and his wasted Taoist cultivation were not mentioned at all. This kind of stubbornness made Xiao Hua admire him, and some of the hatred from before lessened. Actually, humans were very complicated and had many sides. No matter what Xiao Jian's character was like, he would always have some good points. After more than 10 days, Xiao Hua and the others arrived in front of a large city. This large city was more than 10 zhang high, and the city walls were made of several feet of green bricks. There were some mottled brownish-black color in the gaps between the bricks, and there were also some dark green moss. The entire city wall wasn't particularly flat, and there were many potholes on the brick surface. The potholes were big and small, and the big ones were several feet wide, covering several large stones. The small ones were the size of a thumb and several inches deep. Between these potholes, there were hair-thin cracks connected together. In addition to the thick brownish-black color accumulated in the gaps between the bricks, the potholes on the city wall were also the same color, giving off a heavy feeling. In particular, in this dusk, the dusk revealed itself from the ground and reflected on the city wall. The light and shadow were like a sad note on the city wall. On top of the city wall, there were many banners that stretched for miles. The flagpoles of these banners were as thick as a bowl and 1 zhang high. The flags on the flagpoles were also several feet wide, and there were totems of birds and beasts drawn on them. There were also words such as Bronze Pillar Country and Su written on them. These banners fluttered in the wind, and there was a feeling of golden drums being beaten. Along with the dong 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 sounds of drums, there were people wearing battle armor and holding spears on the city wall. They quickly ran along the city wall to change positions, giving people the illusion of war. "Father, our city is so high." A childish voice sounded from Xiao Hua's side. Xiao Hua shifted his gaze away from the city wall, and he saw a 3-year-old child riding on the neck of a burly man, crying out in surprise. "Yes, Niao, this is my Bronze Pillar Country's capital. This is also what father told you before, the capital that even under the joint attack of 40,000 soldiers from 3 countries, they still couldn't take it." The burly man said in a loud voice. "Boy knows." The child's clear voice replied, "They besieged our capital for 10 days and 10 nights, but they still couldn't break through the city wall. In the end, our king led a large army back to the capital and used 8,000 soldiers to defeat the enemy, causing them to flee. Look at the marks on the city wall, they were all made by stones in the past. Those rocks are falling like rain. Only the cities and soldiers of my Bronze Pillar country can withstand such a ferocious attack." The burly man said and looked up at the soldiers running back and forth on the city wall. He said regretfully, "It's a pity that it's war now, otherwise father could bring you up to the city wall to take a look." "It's okay, father. Boy will also join the army when he grows up. At that time, Boy will personally go up to the city wall to defend." The child said very seriously. "Haha, not bad, this is my Bronze Pillar country's child. I'll be waiting for the day you'll be on guard duty in the capital city." The man laughed heartily as he carried the child toward the city gate that was several feet wide. "Hee hee." Xiao Jian laughed coldly. "Bronze Pillar country is so militaristic, the capital city is nothing more than this." Dao Master Xiao is right. Lu Yi stood up on the carriage and said with a smile, "This kid has been to a few countries' capital cities before. This Bronze Pillar country city cannot be considered the highest or the biggest." That's right. Although this city is over 10 zhang tall, Xiao Hua had seen Tongmu City, Suntian City and so on. Which one of them is not 10 times bigger than this city? This kind of small mortal city really cannot enter his eyes. However, the mottled marks on the city wall are all made of blood and meat paste, making Xiao Hua sigh. As for Yuanya, he probably doesn't care about city walls at all. "Xiao Jian, this city doesn't have a name?" Xiao Hua looked at the 3 words, Bronze Pillar Country, above the city gate and unconsciously frowned. "Reporting to Immortal Elder." Xiao Jian said with a smile, "According to the rules of the hidden Immortal continent, the capital city does not have a name, only the country's name. On the contrary, other cities have their own names. Oh, so that means this capital city is originally Bronze Pillar country? Xiao Hua smiled. This custom is really interesting. Yes. Xiao Jian raised his hand and said, the king of the Bronze Pillar Nation lives in this capital. The Bronze Pillar Nation's royal palace is also there. And so are the civil and military officials. As long as the capital city is captured, the Bronze Pillar Nation will fall. It's normal to say that this capital city is the Bronze Pillar Nation. There are rivers all around this capital city. Is this used to protect the city? Xiao Hua pointed again and frowned. Is this kind of defense useful? Immortal Elder should know that this is called a city moat. Xiao Jian explained, the city moat can separate the city from the enemy's cavalry, heavy infantry and so on, preventing them from directly facing the enemy. Moreover, there is a lot of river water in this moat. Some of it is poisonous water, some of it is fire water. Wanting to pass through this moat is not easy. This Bronze Pillar country's moat is relatively wide. Ordinary catapults are unable to get close. Those huge rocks that hit the city walls are also powerless. It is said that in Bronze Pillar country's moat there are man-eating fish beasts. That year when the three countries besieged the city, thousands of people died in the moat. Actually, Xiao Hua hesitated and said, this moat is nothing in this Xiao's eyes. This Xiao remembered that you once said that Bronze Pillar country was ruled by Confucian cultivators. Confucian cultivators have countless methods. This moat is of limited use. Just like the so-called three countries besieging the city, as long as someone flies up and attacks, the city will not be destroyed. Immortal Elder. Xiao Jian laughed. This Bronze Pillar country is ruled by Confucian cultivator aristocratic families, but these aristocratic families are not necessarily in charge of this country. There are even other countries. The Confucian cultivator aristocratic families do not care about the wars between these countries. Moreover, even if the wars between different countries are fought, the ones to bear the brunt are the Confucian cultivator aristocratic families behind the scenes, not the city. As long as these Confucian cultivator aristocratic families have an agreement and compromise with each other, there will be no talk of attacking the city. Only when the Confucian cultivator aristocratic families are unable to coordinate will they attack the city. In fact, only when two Confucian cultivators are equal in strength will they start fighting. The three countries besieging the city that the man spoke of, as far as this junior knows, there were three smaller Confucian cultivator aristocratic families that wanted to replace the Confucian cultivator aristocratic family with the surname Su. So the three families and three countries attacked the Bronze Pillar country. As for the end, it seems that the Su family invited another great Confucian cultivator to settle the war. As for what that man said about the king leading the army to save the city, that is a skillful rumor. This old man understands. Xiao Hua nodded slightly. In this world, when things reach the ears of the common people, how can there be any truth? While they were talking, a group of children holding small lanterns ran out of the city gate, shouting happily. These lanterns were all made of green lotus leaves, and the places they illuminated were either square or oval. However, they were all painted with a green and white color, making the lanterns look like lotus flowers. Seeing this scene, Xiao Jian was stunned and sighed. Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival. Time really flies. Hungry Ghost Festival? Xiao Hua naturally did not know what the Hungry Ghost Festival was, but he did not ask too much. After all, it was fine if he did not know about the Bronze Pillar country. It was just that he had cultivated for a long time and did not step into the mortal world, so it was not a big deal. If he did not even know about the usual festivals, then there would be a problem with Xiao Hua's origin. Xiao Hua did not want others to have any suspicions. Chapter 32:48. Let's go, we'll enter the city. Xiao Hua looked at the setting sun and waved his hand. This large city was the capital of the Bronze Pillar country, so the interrogation was naturally strict. When the four of them arrived at the city gate, they were stopped by the soldiers guarding the gate. The Bronze Pillar country was founded by Confucian cultivators and did not respect Taoism. Xiao Jian was sweating profusely from the questioning, but fortunately, his official documents were normal and everything in the country of Xi was normal. After spending some money, they successfully entered the city gate. As soon as they entered the city gate, the liveliness in front of them was different from the outside. Outside the city gate, there were only villages, simple and plain like what Xiao Hua and the others saw. After entering the city gate, it looked like there were also villages and rivers, but whether it was the people's clothes or temperament, it was different from outside the city. In particular, these villages did not have the same smoke as outside the city. Only a few places had some smoke, but most places did not have any smoke. On the side of the river, there were many children who were excitedly throwing fist-sized lanterns into the water under the guidance of the adults. They wanted to watch the lanterns float down the river. Unfortunately, most of these crudely made lanterns sank to the bottom of the river as soon as they touched the water, causing the children to cry out in pain. These are the manners of the wealthy families in the suburbs of the Bronze Pillar country. Seeing that Xiao Hua was looking at the surrounding mountain villages, Xiao Jian said indifferently, "They have a large amount of wealth in their hands and want to live a leisurely life in the countryside. However, they cannot truly move out of the city, or even to other towns. They will draw a plot of land at the edge of the capital and live the life they want." After another hour of riding on horseback, the road beneath their feet had been replaced by bluestone slabs. The trees on both sides were neatly arranged, and lanterns were hung on the trees. From afar, they looked like twinkling stars. Looking at the surrounding buildings, they were also tall and big. These magnificent buildings were all famous shops in the capital city. Now they were all decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and their doors were wide open. Many people strolled on the main road and unconsciously walked in. With so many people, Xiao Hua and the others naturally couldn't ride horses. Lu Yi very cleverly took Xiao Hua's reins and led the horse behind Xianxia. There was an inn nearby with many people lodging there. However, Xiao Jian only glanced at it once before walking past without stopping at all. Xiao Hua thought that it was because there were too many people here. However, after passing by a few more houses, Xiao Jian didn't even look at them. Xiao Hua was greatly surprised and asked, "Xiao Jian, it's already late. This Xiao doesn't need to rest. You all need to stay here. Aren't you going to find an inn?" "Hee, Immortal, you haven't been in the mortal world for a long time. I'm afraid you don't know. If it were a normal day, we would be willing to stay here. However, today is the Hungry Ghost Festival, a festival for the secular world, and also a sacrifice for our Taoists. Since we are Taoists, we should stay in the Taoist temple and not spend the night outside." Xiao Jian said with a bitter smile. All right. Xiao Hua didn't expect that the fallen Taoists still had so many rules. He could only nod his head. However, after seeing so many people, Xiao Jian began to ask around. However, when they saw Xiao Jian's Taoist robe, they hurriedly avoided him as if they saw a fly. They didn't give Xiao Jian a chance to speak. "Taoist Xiao, it's better for this little one to go." Lu Yi couldn't bear to watch for a moment and said in a low voice. N. After hearing Xiao Jian's agreement, Lu Yi handed the reins of the horse to Xianxia and disappeared into the crowd. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Lu Yi had already returned. He pointed ahead and said, "Taoist Xiao, there's a Shilua ridge 2 miles ahead. There's a Qiang temple on it." Immediately after, he walked in front of Xiao Hua and respectfully said, "Taoist Xiao, this little one has just made some inquiries. It just so happens that there will be an auction tonight at Bright Moon Lane. That place isn't too far from Seven Suns Monastery. However, it's still early. Are you going to Qiang Temple or Bright Moon Lane?" Xiao Hua was overjoyed when he heard this and said with a smile, "Since this Xiao is also a Taoist disciple, I'll go to Qiang Temple first. It won't be too late to go to Bright Moon Lane after I'm done." "Okay, this little one will lead the way." Lu Yi took the reins from Xianxia's hands and walked to the front. Just after turning a few streets, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. Between the tall buildings, there was a huge garden. The people around Xiao Hua suddenly increased. Not only were there men and women behind Xiao Hua, but there were also other streets that connected to the other directions of the garden. There were also more people coming from those places. "Okay." A burst of noise came from the crowd in front. Then, a 1-foot-long lotus flower lantern rose from the crowd. The lotus flower lantern looked very exquisite. Whether it was the lotus leaves at the bottom or the flower petals around the lantern cover, they were all very lifelike. Moreover, these flower petals trembled slightly under the light of the lantern, just like a bud that was blooming. However, the lotus flower lantern had just flown a few dozen feet into the air when another voice shouted, "Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival. This lotus flower lantern should go with the flow of the water. Although flying in the air is beautiful, it doesn't conform to etiquette." Moreover, my bronze pillar country's capital strictly forbids foreign objects from flying in the air. If this little one's lotus flower flies too high, I'm afraid it will be shot down by the Imperial Guard's arrows. Everyone, take pity on this cute lotus flower, right? Let it go home quickly. Okay. Everyone shouted in unison. Their voices were filled with laughter and anticipation. Wang! The sound of a sword rang out. A red sword light rushed into the air and hit the lotus flower lantern. Ingeniously, the sword light hooked slightly and brought the lotus flower lantern back. As the lotus flower lantern fell in front of everyone, the sound of cheers came from the stream again. Hee hee, neighbors, my Bronze Pillar Academy has many students studying here. We often disturb you all. Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival, the day when 100 ghosts come out. It is also the time for us to commemorate our ancestors. My academy's students have nothing good to give everyone. Leave the finishing touch of this lotus flower lantern to us students. Although our cultivation isn't very profound, the lotus flower lantern after finishing touch will be able to bring everyone's thoughts to your loved ones in the underworld. The finishing touch of the lotus flower lantern will also be able to repel all evil. Okay, a delicate girl clapped her hands and said. This servant heard that Sir Zhong's scarlet character Zhong is the most righteous of the world and is the most effective in repelling evil. This servant specially came from 100 li away to find this place. Sir, please bestow this character. When Xiao Hua and the others heard the sound, they had already walked closer. They saw that this was a garden about half a mu in size. Inside, there were pavilions, small bridges, winding corridors, and streams. Many green vines hung above the pavilions and winding corridors. Although it was already July's scorching summer, the night's hot wind was still a lot cooler. In particular, there were strings of purple xiaohua flowers hanging on the vines. They were only the size of soybeans. As they swayed in the wind, they emitted a faint fragrance that was really intoxicating. At this moment, there were dozens of men and women surrounding a pavilion on the left side. The pavilion was surrounded by flowing water, and the sound of water gurgling could be heard. Inside the pavilion and next to the pavilion steps, there were several white-clothed scholars. The one who spoke was a middle-aged scholar. This scholar stood in front of the steps, and the corners of his mouth were slightly tilted up. He looked as if he was smiling at any time. Although the two eyebrows that matched his beard weren't particularly slender, they were very dark. His eyes also looked ordinary, but the gaze in his eyes was deep, making people's gazes immediately captured by them. This scholar was holding a writing brush in his hand. The brush was as thick as a baby's arm and more than a foot long. The tip of the brush was stained with a thick scarlet ink, which looked a little dazzling. However, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the scholar stood there, and a kind of silent temperament shrouded the entire pavilion. Moreover, this scholar's figure was tall and straight, standing there straight. Although he was holding a brush in his hand, it looked as if it was sharper than a flying sword. Many thanks for Mrs. Favor. The scholar smiled before saying anything. His dark eyes opened, causing a woman on the winding corridor opposite to blush. Please bring Mrs. Lotus Flower Lantern. This Jiang will give you the finishing touch. Hee hee. Without waiting for the girl to speak, the girl's friends beside her had already pushed her to the front. The scholar waved his hand, and the lotus flower lantern in the girl's hand immediately seemed to be taken by an invisible hand and slowly fell into the scholar's hand. Good. Immediately, there were many busybodies who cheered loudly. Rise. The scholar pointed at the lotus flower lantern, and it immediately flew from his hand. As the lotus flower lantern's light illuminated the surroundings once again, the scholar raised the brush in his hand and began to walk with strange steps. He chanted, Heaven and earth have righteous energy, and all kinds of things are manifold. Below are rivers and mountains, and above are the sun and stars. To people, they are vast and abundant, filling the heavens. The path of the emperor shall be cleared, and he shall spit out the court. Following this impassioned recitation, the scholar's body emitted a scarlet light. At the same time, the light trembled and shone with the scholar's footsteps. Finally, it slowly fell on the scholar's brush, and the scholar's final words were heard. Spit out the court. With a shout, the scarlet light between the brush and the brush shone brightly. In the instant the brush flashed, the scholar placed the brush on the lotus flower lantern. The light covered the lantern's light, and when the light disappeared, the lantern's light was revealed again. A scarlet, one character appeared on the lotus flower lantern. The one character was like a golden hook, and every stroke was like a sharp sword. An unconcealable sword intent was emitted from this character. Good. The girl couldn't help but clap her hands and cheer. Miss, please keep this lotus flower lantern well. If you miss your loved ones, can you personally place this lantern in the stream? The scholar with the surname Jiang put away the brush and said with a smile, when the gate to heaven and earth opens at midnight, the people you miss will definitely see it and will definitely visit you in your dreams. Chapter 32:49. Hee hee. Thank you, Mr. Jiang. Seeing the lotus lantern falling from the sky, the girl hurriedly grabbed it and said with a smile, I want to put Mr. Jiang's calligraphy at home to suppress evil. I can't bear to let it flow in the stream. The girl's emotions were clearly very rich, and her expression could be considered naked. However, Mr. Jiang smiled and cupped his hands. No matter what, I hope Miss will have a wonderful Hungry Ghost Festival. Mr. Jiang, Mr. Jiang. For a moment, many men and women shouted, wanting Mr. Jiang to add the finishing touches to their lotus lanterns. Ha! Thank you for your support. This Jiang is just an ordinary person in the academy. This Jiang has many martial brothers, and their cultivation is not inferior to this Jiang's. Everyone, don't worry. Mr. Jiang laughed and waved his hand. Many lotus lanterns flew out from everyone's hands and landed near the pavilion. Not only in front of Mr. Jiang, but also in front of the other students. Xiao Hua and the others were not too close to the pavilion, but when many lotus lanterns flew up, the bright light still illuminated them. Mr. Jiang's gaze was like lightning, sweeping past the four people. When he saw Xiao Zhen's Taoist robe, he unconsciously paused, and a strange expression flashed. However, this expression disappeared in a flash, and his gaze fell on the lotus lanterns again. The three principles are related to fate, and the Tao is the root. Yu 9 yang. Li Li also insufficient. Chu Qiu Ing crown. Send the carriage to the north. Cauldron sweet as syrup. Seek but cannot obtain. Inside the pavilion, the sonorous and powerful chanting voice came out word by word. Many students waved their ink brushes to add the finishing touches to the lotus lanterns. Xiao Hua and the others walked out from the pavilion. This garden was lively, but this liveliness belonged to the students, to the villagers, and not to them. Other than the pavilion closest to Xiao Hua, from time to time, there was soaring true energy blooming in other places of the garden, and even some gorgeous sword energy. In this kind of noisy night, this kind of righteous night, even if it was the Hungry Ghost Festival, even if it was the night of 100 ghosts, there was no need to be afraid of ghosts approaching, right? After leaving the garden, Xiao Hua and the others walked a few streets under Lu Yi's lead. The surroundings gradually quieted down. Although there were still some hanging lanterns, it was far less noisy than before. Moreover, these few streets already looked dilapidated and even a little desolate. The distance between the streets was getting longer and longer, and there was a river that wasn't particularly wide beside the street. However, the river was filled with stinky water, and the air was filled with a foul stench and a bunch of flies. A small bridge appeared in front of Xiao Hua's horse. Several beggars in ragged clothes were holding dirty basins in their hands as they quickly walked past Xiao Hua's horse. Xiao Hua smiled because he could already see that behind the small bridge, there was a desolate slope. There were a few dilapidated shacks on the left side, and the smelly gutter-like stream on the left side was precisely circling around this desolate slope and the shacks. This must be Shilua Ridge and Seven Suns Monastery, Xiao Hua thought in his heart. However, just as he was about to speak, he frowned again. With a sweep of his divine sense, he saw two black-clothed people about 100 feet away from him. They were quickly passing through a pile of ruins. They were using qinggong to run into the distance. These people. Could they be the local? Xiao Hua's divine sense only swept a little, but he didn't know why these people had aroused his vigilance. After thinking for a moment, he asked, Lu Yi, is there any organization similar to the Cloak Gang in the Copper Pillar country? There is. Lu Yi replied without hesitation. Black Wind Sect. Oh, isn't this the capital of the Copper Pillar country? How can such evil people exist? Xiao Hua withdrew his divine sense and asked curiously. Without waiting for Lu Yi to speak, Xiao Jian coldly said, Senior Immortal should know that since ancient times, officials and bandits have been one family. Not to mention the borders, They exist in any country's capital. N. Xiao Hua nodded slightly and pointed with his finger. Let's go. After crossing this bridge, Seven Suns Monastery will be in front. Clatter, clatter. The monotonous sound of horse hooves echoed in the quiet street. At the side of the lively Copper Pillar Academy, in the garden that Xiao Hua had just walked through, there was a slightly dark place. Teacher Jiang, with sweat on his forehead, was sitting there drinking tea and resting. With a sound of a flying sword, an inch-long flying sword landed in front of Teacher Jiang's eyes. Teacher Jiang frowned and looked left and right. With a clap of his hand, the flying sword turned into a small paper sword and stopped in his hand. When Teacher Jiang opened the paper and saw what was inside, his expression didn't change. A sword light appeared in his hand and shredded the paper. Then he stood up and said indifferently, 100 Ghosts Parade, 100 Ghosts Parade. Hearing that the Seven Suns Monastery was right in front of him, Xiao Jian patted the horse beneath him. The horse quickened its pace and climbed onto the small bridge that wasn't too tall. At this moment, the full moon in the sky had yet to rise and the small bridge was a little blurry in the night. When Xiao Jian climbed onto the bridge, he realized that the other side of the small bridge was very low-lying. It was a vast expanse of darkness and there were occasional flickers of light. It was completely different from what he had seen before. Let's go there. Xiao Hua pointed at the left side of the bridge. There was a dim yellow light there, but it wasn't obvious. Hi, all the Taoist temples in the world are one family. Xiao Jian sighed. Although the capital of Copper Pillar Nation is prosperous, Seven Suns Monastery and Longevity Town's Jianghu Monastery are no different. When everyone got close to the dim yellow light, they saw a door blocked by a pile of broken tiles. This door was about 1 zhang wide and 2 zhang tall. However, Xiao Jian lost interest after a glance. There was no other reason. Other than the fact that it was several times bigger than the Jianghu Monastery's door, the entire Seven Suns Monastery's door looked as though someone had moved the entire Jianghu Monastery's door over. The paint on the door was dry, like the scales of a river fish that had been scraped off. Some fell off, some hung there. Even the door that was open was like the Jianghu Monastery's door. It was slanted and looked as though it was about to fall off the axle. Of course, on the two sides of the door, there were 2 big red lanterns with holes in them. On the door, although it was very clean, the words Seven Suns Monastery were still blurry. This told Xiao Jian that he wasn't dreaming of Longevity Town. Slow down, slow down. Xiao Jian had just walked to the front of Seven Suns Monastery when he heard an unusually benevolent voice. Although this voice was old and hoarse, it was extremely clear in the night sky and wind. Benevolent Lord, please eat slowly. If it's not enough, there will be more. Xiao Jian looked over in confusion. Right in front of Seven Suns Monastery, there was a big iron pot. Inside the iron pot was steaming hot porridge. In front of the iron pot, there were more than 10 beggars in ragged clothes. There were old and young beggars, and there were even a few women carrying babies on their backs. These beggars, without exception, all had their gazes on the porridge. They licked their dry lips and swallowed their saliva without concealing it. A sickly youth with a face full of stains received a bowl of porridge. He didn't care that the porridge was scalding hot and immediately drank a mouthful. Behind the iron pot, there was a short old man holding a wooden spoon in his hand. He hurriedly said to the youth. Under the light, the old man's smiling expression was as though he was looking at his own anxious grandson. Xiao Hua had already dismounted from his horse and walked behind Xiao Jian. His gaze was different from Xiao Jian's. It didn't land on the porridge, but rather on the old man. This old man was about 60 years old. His back was a little hunched, and he wore a slightly loose Taoist robe. This Taoist robe didn't seem to have any luster under the light. It was obvious that it had long been worn out. The old man's sparse white hair was neatly combed and tied into a small Taoist crown on his head. The old man was very hale and hearty, and he had a sage-like appearance. However, in Xiao Hua's eyes, this old Taoist was no different from an ordinary person. Not only did he not have any magic power, he didn't have any Taoist cultivation. Good people. The old Taoist's gaze moved away from the youth and he said apologetically, "This porridge has just been cooked. Originally, I wanted to wait for it to cool down before taking it out. However, I was afraid that you would be hungry and wait for a long time, so I hurriedly took it out. Everyone, after serving it, let it cool down a little before eating." Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival. I don't have much food, but I still have this porridge. It will definitely be enough. Thank you, Taoist. These beggars said weakly. It was obvious that they were really hungry. Some of them had already heard the sound of Xiao Jian's horse hooves and raised their eyes to look at Xiao Jian's group. The old Taoist's ears didn't seem to be working well. He didn't hear the sound of horse hooves and continued to use the spoon to scoop up a spoonful of porridge from the iron pot. His arm was trembling as he poured the porridge into the broken bowl of another beggar who had already stretched out his arm. Oh! When Xiao Jian jumped down from his horse, his figure flashed past the old Taoist's eyes. Only then did the old Taoist realize that someone was approaching. Turning his head, he saw Xiao Jian's Taoist robe. Joy flashed across the old Taoist's eyes as he called out, "Immeasurable Taoist, fellow Taoist is here? I am Xiao Jian. Greetings. Senior." Xiao Jian placed a palm in front of his chest and bowed respectfully. "I don't dare. This old Taoist, Dao Shan, is only a few years older than you. I can't be considered a senior." The old Taoist didn't put down the spoon in his hand and returned the greeting with one hand. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait for a moment. Once this old Taoist has given the porridge to these good people, I will invite fellow Taoist into the temple for a chat. Senior Dao Shan, please go ahead first." Xiao Jian looked at the door behind the old Taoist in bewilderment. He didn't understand. This Seven Sons Temple's door was so big. Shouldn't it have some disciples? Could it be that this Dao Shan was even worse off than him? He didn't even have a disciple? The old Taoist naturally saw Xiao Hua and the others behind Xiao Jian. However, seeing that they were all young, he thought that they were Xiao Jian's disciples. He smiled kindly and scooped porridge for the beggars. However, after a short while, the old Taoist's arm trembled even more violently. Chapter 3250. Xiao Jian couldn't help but ask, "Senior, you're already old, why do you have to do everything yourself? Why don't you just leave these things to your disciple?" "Haha, fellow Taoist Xiao, every bowl of porridge should reflect on the difficulties of Taoism. Every word and action should follow the benevolence of the Taoist ancestor. Meditation is cultivation, refining energy is cultivation, giving porridge is cultivation. This old Taoist has given porridge for 50 years. Even though I have one foot in the grave now, I still don't dare to neglect it." Dao Shan rested for a while and said with a smile. Hiss. Not only was Xiao Jian shocked, even Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. Giving porridge for 50 years. This wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Immediately, Xiao Hua felt that he had lived for 200 years in vain. Although that was what he said, Dao Shan was old after all, and the wooden spoon was big. This old Taoist scooped a few more spoonfuls and couldn't scoop any more. "Yeah!" Xiao Jian shouted, "Where the hell did you go? Hurry up and help your senior get the porridge." "Yes, master." Yuanya answered and came out. However, when Yuanya came out from the shadow behind Xiao Hua, his figure flashed past the porridge, and the group of beggars were all frightened. "Taoist Xiao, let me do it." Lu Yi saw that although Dao Shan didn't frown, there was obviously some worry in his eyes, so he hurriedly jumped down from the carriage. Lu Yi's mouth was sweet. He walked in front of Dao Shan and bowed respectfully. "Grandpa Dao, you've been doing good all your life, and this kindness must be passed down. I, Lu Yi, am not talented, but I'm willing to accept the root of kindness of our Taoism, and continue doing good deeds. If Grandpa Dao is still worried, how about you give me some pointers on my cultivation?" Dao Shan looked at Lu Yi's cleverness and his pleasing words. He had to give the spoon to Lu Yi even if he didn't want to. However, Dao Shan was still standing at the side. He watched as Lu Yi filled every beggar's bowl to the brim without any slack. Only then did he feel relieved and turn to Xiao Jian, saying, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you're so lucky. Your disciple is 100 times better than my disciple." "I don't dare." Xiao Jian hurriedly waved his hand and let Xiao Hua go. He smiled and said, "Lu Yi is senior servant, not my disciple." Dao Shan was obviously stunned. Looking at Xiao Hua's youthful face, he seemed to have understood something. He hurriedly tidied up his Taoist robe and bowed respectfully. "I, Dao Shan, greet senior." How could Xiao Hua bear to let this benevolent old Taoist bow to him? With a wave of his hand, the old Taoist was unable to bow down. Xiao Hua rushed to bow first and said, I, Xiaohua, greet Great Master Dao Shan. Dao Shan was unable to kneel down, and he knew that Xiaohua had an extraordinary background. His eyes flashed with surprise, and then he smiled bitterly. I don't practice Taoism, I only read Taoism scriptures. I'm not good at soliciting alms. I only know how to give alms. I've never practiced Taoism, so how can I be called a master? Grandmaster, you're wrong. Xiaohua said with a smile. There are countless paths of cultivation, and none of them are smooth. The great master prioritizes kindness. His actions are like a drop of water. For nearly 60 years, he has benefited all living beings. Although I have done good deeds before, if I am as persistent as Grandmaster, I can't. If Grandmaster can't be called a Grandmaster, then who can? If Grandmaster isn't a Grandmaster, then there are no Grandmasters in this hidden immortal continent. Senior. Dao Shan was still modest. I entered Taoism when I was young, and I have always admired people like you who have remarkable Taoism skills. However, I have never had such an opportunity in my life. Therefore, I use such a meager method to do my best for Taoism. This is really not worth mentioning in front of Senior. Senior's words make me ashamed. Call me fellow Taoist, Xiaohua said with a smile. He really didn't want to be called Senior by such an old man. After all, the old man had reached the end of his life. Although he was old, he was still in his prime. Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao. Dao Shan was very happy. However, when he spoke, he realized something. So you two fellow Taoists are from the same family. Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. Xiaohua shook his head. I only met Taoist Xiao by chance. All Taoism in the world is from the same family. Meeting each other is fate, Dao Shan said with a smile. Then, he looked at the many beggars who were slowly rushing over from afar. The smile on his face disappeared. Sigh, this year, Bronze Pillar Nation is expanding its army. The number of beggars in the country is increasing. Goo-goo. Xiao Jian's stomach actually started to growl. Although the old Taoist's ears weren't very good, he was really close to Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian's thunderous growl immediately made him understand. Hee, I am really happy to see fellow Taoist. Sorry for the lack of manners. Dao Shan smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, please wait for a moment. I will call my disciples out to welcome you. Don't. Xiaohua saw Dao Shan's neat clothes and knew that the old Taoist was very particular about it. He didn't know what kind of etiquette Dao Shan had, so he hurriedly stopped him. However, Dao Shan waved his hand and said, Confucian cultivators have always been about etiquette. They use etiquette to govern the country. Although Taoism doesn't have too many complicated etiquettes, fellow Taoist came from afar. My Seven Sons Temple has to treat you seriously. If Confucian cultivators were to see this, they would definitely mock my Taoism. Xiaohua wanted to say more, but Xiao Jian smiled and said, Senior Dao Shan's Seven Sons Temple is a real Taoist temple. If you don't let him welcome Senior in, I'm afraid you will lose face for my Taoism. It won't look good if word gets out. All right. Xiaohua was curious. He didn't understand why a Taoist temple needed to welcome him. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the iron pot in front of Seven Sons Temple was already empty. However, there were still many skinny and sallow beggars in front of the iron pot. These beggars saw that the porridge was gone and left in disappointment. However, there were still some who looked at it and stubbornly stayed in front of the iron pot. Taoist. Looking at the empty door, Lui said softly, Are we letting these people leave? Xiaohua smiled and said, Let them wait first. Once we enter, we will let Master Dao Shan cook the porridge. Yes, Lui said softly. Those beggars were all overjoyed and obediently waited there. Just as they were talking, a string of music came from the Seven Sons Temple. Then, a few skinny Taoist children walked out from the door with either a flute, or a sheng in their hands. Behind these Taoist children, there was Dao Shan who led a dozen or so neatly dressed middle-aged and old Taoist priests. Dao Shan, who was walking at the front, was even holding a long white plank-like thing in his hand. Xiaohua wanted to ask Xiao Jian, but Xiao Jian's face had already turned solemn. He quickly walked to the door of Seven Sons Temple and stood straight with his hands in his Taoist robe. He lowered his head and looked at the ground. Seeing this, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly walked to Xiao Jian's side and stood still. Seeing Xiao Hua come, Xiao Jian hurriedly took half a step back to show the difference. Lu Yi was quick-witted. He hurriedly pulled Yuan Ye, who was stunned at the side, and stood beside Xiao Hua while Xiao Jian was behind him. He let Yuan Ye stand beside him so that he was facing Xiao Jian. Dao Shan and the others walked in front of Xiao Hua. They didn't say anything until the song ended. Only then did they say, "I, Dao Shan of Seven Suns Temple, welcome Senior Xiao Hua and fellow Taoist Xiao Jian to my Seven Suns Temple." Following these words, Dao Shan raised the plank and bowed respectfully. Disciples welcome Senior Xiao. Even though they saw that Xiao Hua was very young, many Taoist priests still bowed respectfully. Xiao Hua and the others also returned the bow. Although Xiao Hua didn't know the specific etiquette, he still raised his hand and the dozen or so people were lifted up by him. Everyone was shocked. "Senior Xiao, please enter the temple to pay respects to the Taoist ancestor." Dao Shan's expression didn't change. He said word by word and turned around. "Yes, master, please." Xiao Hua replied and walked towards Dao Shan. When Xiao Hua's figure passed by Dao Shan also walked forward and accompanied Xiao Hua into the temple. Seven Suns Temple wasn't small. After entering the temple, they saw a rather large courtyard. There were 2 rows of rooms on the east and west. Opposite them was a very imposing hall. Although these rooms were old, their scale was far from what Tidal River Temple could compare to. In particular, there were 2 side doors on both sides of the hall that led directly to the back of the hall. Thinking of the scene he saw from the small bridge, Xiao Hua knew that there was a large place behind the hall even without Dao Shan's introduction. The hall was brightly lit. In addition to a few oil lamps in the hall, there were 3 arm-thick red candles burning brightly on the altar table. In addition to the red candles, there was also an incense burner on the altar table. A few incense sticks rose in spirals from the incense burner. On both sides of the incense burner, there were several plates. On the plates were some rice, noodles, grains, and so on. However, what puzzled Xiao Hua was that there was no statue of a Dao ancestor behind the altar table. Instead, there were several levels of shrine platforms. On the shrine platforms, there were small signs with some words written on them. In front of the signs, there were small celadone bowls. "Pay respects to the Dao ancestor." When Xiao Hua walked to the center of the hall, Dao Shan shouted loudly. He was full of energy. How was he like a 60-year-old old man? Looking at the empty shrine platform and the signs, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had already thought about this problem when he was in Dawn Rain Continent. Who was the Dao ancestor? Now that he was in Hidden Immortal Continent, this problem still hadn't been solved. He hadn't even paid respects to the Dao ancestor when he was in Dawn Rain Continent. "Let the dead be respected." Xiao Hua imitated Xiao Jian and placed his hand inside his Taoist robe. He raised his hand up to his forehead and then slowly bowed. Only when his forehead was at the same level as the altar did he stop. Then he bowed 2 more times, making a total of 3 bows. "Respect to your teacher." When Xiao Hua got up, Dao Shan shouted again. This time, the 3 bows were a bit higher than the previous 3 bows. Xiao Hua paid attention to Xiao Jian's actions and followed step by step. "Greetings, fellow Taoist." Dao Shan shouted and turned around. He held the board that had already turned yellow in his hand and led his disciple to greet Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua now understood that this board that had turned yellow was actually carved out of jade. Chapter 3251. Although he had already greeted Dao Shan and the others outside the Seven Suns Temple, Xiao Hua still followed the so-called etiquette of the Taoist sect and greeted them again. After the greeting, Dao Shan's smile became even wider. He walked to the altar and placed the jade board on it. Then he picked up 3 incense sticks and said to Xiao Hua with a smile, "Senior Xiao, please light the incense for the Taoist ancestor." Xiao Hua took the incense sticks and waved his hand. A flame flashed and the 3 incense sticks were immediately lit. A strange expression appeared in the eyes of the dozens of disciples who saw this. After Xiao Hua respectfully placed the incense sticks on the incense burner, Dao Shan was obviously relieved. He raised his hand and said, "Thank you, Senior Xiao. Please come to the side hall for tea." As he spoke, the Taoist children holding the flute and other musical instruments started playing again. Under Dao Shan's lead, Xiaohua walked past a yellow curtain and arrived at the side hall. There was a yellow praying mat and a few tables and chairs here. However, Dao Shan didn't sit down immediately when he walked to the chair. Instead, he closed his eyes slightly. This made Xiaohua confused. He looked at Xiao Jian and was also confused. However, the two of them could only do as they were told. When the music floated into the night sky, Dao Shan opened his eyes and raised his hand with a smile. "Senior, fellow Taoist, please sit." "Fellow Taoist, please." Xiaohua smiled and sat down. After that, Xiao Jian and Dao Shan also sat down. Lu Yi and Yuanya obediently stood behind the two of them. A Taoist child with delicate features hurriedly came over with a tray that had some paint chipped off. He brought over 3 cups of green tea. When the Taoist child went down, he seemed to have something to say. However, when he saw that Dao Shan's attention was on Xiaohua, he didn't dare to speak. He waved his hand at a slightly older disciple behind Dao Shan and went down. That older disciple glanced at Dao Shan who was talking to Xiaohua and nodded slightly at Xiaohua. Then, he quietly walked out. Dao Shan's ears weren't very good, so he naturally didn't notice. "Senior Xiao, where do you cultivate? How many disciples do you have?" Dao Shan asked respectfully after inviting Xiaohua to drink a mouthful of tea. Xiaohua drank a mouthful of tea. This tea was very bitter and astringent, making the tea somewhat black. Xiaohua only touched his lips and felt relieved. He replied with a smile, "I'll let Grandmaster know. This Xiao used to cultivate overseas, so I don't have any disciples. This Lu Yi is just a servant." "Overseas?" Dao Shan's eyes lit up. He said anxiously, "Is it the Eastern Sea? When I was young, I wanted to go to the East Sea to take a look, but until now, I still haven't had the chance to see the magnificent East Sea." Xiaohua smiled and shook his head. "Don't ask too much about which overseas master. In short, it's very far. Of course, if you want to go, you can find some time to go and take a look." "Sigh, I am old. I can't walk anymore," Dao Shan said with a smile. Although it sounded like a sigh, there wasn't much sadness in his tone. Xiaohua comforted, "Grandmaster is wrong. Grandmaster's good deeds are clear. The heavenly Tao is naturally fair. It definitely won't let Grandmaster give up at such a young age. There are too few people like Grandmaster in this world. Since Grandmaster has met me, it's an opportunity given to Grandmaster by Dao Zhu. Grandmaster will continue to do good deeds in the Seven Suns Temple in the future." "Hee. Thank you, Senior, for your auspicious words." Dao Shan knew that Xiaohua was a cultivator, but he didn't dare to believe what Xiaohua said. He only smiled and said, Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to take out the rejuvenation pill. After all, Dao Shan was an ordinary person. Xiaohua didn't know if Dao Shan could withstand the effects of the rejuvenation pill. Since he came to the Seven Suns Temple, he naturally wanted to help this kind person from the Dao sect to live a long life. Rumble. Xiao Jian was already hungry. Now that he drank a few mouthfuls of tea, he became even hungrier. "Haha, I forgot." Dao Shan laughed. He turned his head and ordered, "Disciple, go and get a bowl of porridge from Martial Uncle Xiao." A disciple behind Dao Shan had a difficult expression. However, he still responded and prepared to leave. At this moment, the disciple who just walked out returned to the entrance of the main hall. When he heard Dao Shan's order, he hurriedly walked to Dao Shan's side and whispered a few words. Dao Shan frowned and a trace of awkwardness appeared on his face. He then smiled and said to Xiao Jian, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you must be joking. I have already finished the porridge. Moreover, today is the Hungry Ghost Festival. This old Taoist wants to let the benevolent masters around me eat more, so I cooked all the food in the temple into plain porridge. Now that there is no food in the temple, this old Taoist will ask my disciples to pick some vegetables from the backyard. Fellow Taoist, you can cook some. Tomorrow morning, this old Taoist's disciples will sell the vegetables in the market and buy some food." Xiaohua, who was at the side, heard everything clearly. He smiled and said, "Master, you don't have to be so polite. There is no need to persuade the kind people outside to leave. Previously, you were the one who gave the porridge. Now, it is time for me to give the porridge. Master, please let your disciples send me to the place where we store the food." "Oh, Senior Xiao, this is..." Dao Shan didn't understand. Obviously, he didn't understand the Dao sect spells. Senior, Immortal Xiao is a famous cultivator in our Dao sect. He has the ability to transform beings into soldiers and move mountains and seas. You only need to bring Immortal Xiao there. Xiao Jian said with a smile. Dao Shan naturally wouldn't let his disciple bring Xiao Hua there. He personally brought Xiao Hua to the main hall and walked through a few deserted courtyards. Finally, they arrived in front of a small courtyard. Xiao Hua glanced at the wooden door on the left side of the courtyard. Outside the door, under the moonlight, there were a lot of vegetables. In this courtyard, there were two Taoists with strong hands and feet. They were washing the iron pot that they just brought back from outside the temple. Inside here. Dao Shan raised his hand and was about to speak. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "This place is too small. Is there a bigger place?" Dao Shan was helpless. He pointed to a few houses opposite the courtyard and said, "This is where the winter vegetables are stored. It is empty now. Senior, do you really have a spell that can make something out of nothing?" Seeing is believing. Hearing is false. Xiao Hua strode to the front of the few houses. He waved his hand a few times and said with a smile, "Master, take a look for yourself." Dao Shan held a lantern in his hand as he walked shakily to the front of a house. Looking at the tightly packed food inside, tears almost flowed out of his eyes. Xianxia, Xianxia, this winter, my 7 sons' monastery will not starve to death again." Sweat. Xiao Hua couldn't help but sigh. It is only summer and old Taoist Dao Shan is already thinking of giving out porridge in winter. It seems like this kindness has already penetrated deep into old Taoist's bone marrow. Quick, disciples. Let's cook some porridge and invite Senior Xiao to eat. Hurry up and cook the porridge with the iron pot. Let benevolent master outside the temple eat his fill. Dao Shan hurriedly instructed. Dao Shan's disciples all went crazy. They looked at the few houses again and again. After confirming that the food inside was piled up like a mountain, they carefully took some of it to the opposite courtyard and let the Taoist cook it. Everyone looked at Xiao Hua with reverence and respect. This was no different from the immortal Xiao Hua in their hearts. "Ai, Senior Xiao indeed has divine skills." Dao Shan accompanied Xiao Hua back to the side hall. He said emotionally, "This is something that Junior would never have dreamed of." "What divine skills?" Xiao Hua waved his hand. "It's just that this Xiao has a chenkuan pouch and carries some food with me." Dao Shan really didn't know what a chenkuan pouch was. He only understood after Xiao Jian explained it to him. "Wait till tomorrow. This Xiao will let you see what a true divine skill is." Xiao Hua pretended to be mysterious and said, "Okay, Junior will wait and see." Dao Shan didn't know what Xiao Hua wanted to do. He only smiled and agreed. Xiao Hua looked at the main hall and asked again, "This Xiao remembers that there should be a golden body in the Taoist temple. Why isn't our Taoist ancestor here?" "Ai, I'll let Senior know." When this matter was mentioned, Dao Shan's face revealed a worried expression. Tongzhou country was founded by Confucian cultivators and has always rejected our Taoist sect. This Shiluo Ridge originally didn't have any Taoist temples. 100 years ago, it was just a barren slope. All the dirty things in the country were discarded here. Later on, this Taoist ancestor came here and used silver to buy this barren slope. He then built the Qiang temple here. Later on, the king asked about this matter and wanted to demolish the Qiang temple. The Taoist ancestor led a few disciples and went on a hunger strike for 10 days straight. Seeing that our Taoist disciples were determined to keep the Taoist temple, the king was touched and agreed not to demolish the Qiang temple. However, he also didn't allow any golden bodies to be erected in the temple. Thus, the Taoist ancestor placed the spirit tablets of the previous generations of seniors here to worship. He didn't want to erect any golden bodies. Believe in your heart. If you don't believe in it, even if you reconstruct a golden body, it will only be a wedding dress for others. Xiao Hua didn't speak. Instead, Xiao Jian spoke with sorrow. "That's right. If you believe in it, there will be a golden body of the Taoist ancestor everywhere." Dao Shan nodded. Later on, Master and this Taoist ancestor knew that the king didn't like Taoist sect. Thus, we kept a low profile and only did good deeds. Everything in the temple was personally built by this Taoist ancestor and his disciples. There is almost no charity in Tongzhou country. At this point, Dao Shan sighed again. Even so, the Seven Suns Temple is still a little difficult. Originally, no one paid attention to this barren slope. However, now that there are more people than land in the country and this place isn't far from the palace, many people's gazes fell on the Seven Suns Temple again. If not for the recent war between Tongzhou country and Jianghu country, this Taoist ancestor wouldn't be so free here. As he spoke, a Taoist child served a few bowls of plain porridge. Xiaohua naturally didn't need it. Instead, Xianxia and Lu Yi accompanied Xiao Jian to drink a few bowls. Out of Xiaohua's expectations, Dao Shan also drank a bowl. So this Taoist ancestor who gave the porridge didn't eat his fill at night. After everyone finished eating, Xiaohua glanced at Lu Yi and turned to Dao Shan. Fellow Taoist, this Xiao will be staying at the Seven Suns Temple tonight. However, this Xiao still has some matters to attend to at Bright Moon Lane. Fellow Taoist, please rest first. This Xiao will pay you a visit tomorrow morning. Bright Moon Lane? Dao Shan heard and frowned. He hesitated for a moment and asked curiously, Senior, why are you going there? We are outsiders. We shouldn't go there. Chapter 32:52. Oh. Xiaohua did not understand. He smiled and asked, I have some primeval stones here and want to go there to do some transactions. Also, I heard that there is an auction there tonight. I want to go there to take a look. I wonder, what is wrong with that? If that is the case, then I can be at ease. Dao Shan understood and nodded. He pointed with his finger and said, Fellow Taoist, don't be anxious. I will call my disciples over and let them go over. There is no need. Xiaohua had already scanned the area with his divine sense. Other than a few Taoists who were swallowing their saliva behind Dao Shan, the rest of the Taoists were gathered in the courtyard, wolfing down the porridge. He finally understood why Dao Shan wanted to personally guard the beggars outside Seven Suns Temple. Thus, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, Lu Yi has already found out the location of Bright Moon Lane. I actually knew it with one look. Fellow Taoist need not worry. Alright. How could Dao Shan not know what his disciple was like? He stood up and said, I will send Senior out. Haha, fellow Taoist. Just let your disciples watch over my horses. Xiaohua waved his hand and quickly walked out with Lu Yi. As for Xiao Jian, he was slightly stunned but still hurriedly followed behind. Although he did not have any primeval stones, he still wanted to go to Bright Moon Lane to watch the show. This Seven Suns Temple made him feel like he was looking at something that hurt people. When Xiaohua stepped out of Seven Suns Temple, he was slightly shocked and felt a little uncomfortable. When he was about to release his divine sense, the beggars who were giving out porridge and eating porridge in front of the door all looked at him. The few people who were waiting earlier hurriedly shouted, Thank you, Immortal Elder, for the porridge. It seemed like the disciples of Seven Suns Temple had already shown off Xiaohua's immortal method of conjuring food to these beggars. Hee, no need to thank me, no need to thank me. This is all due to Master Dao Shan's mercy. Xiaohua said and hurriedly brought Lu Yi and the rest out of Seven Suns Temple. After walking far away, Xiaohua released his divine sense again and carefully observed Seven Suns Temple. He did not find anything wrong and could not help but feel strange. Strange, is this vigilance? It doesn't seem like it. What kind of sudden impulse? Over the past 100 years, the primordial spirit that Xiaohua had split into the hand of karma had been comprehending the divination technique given by Wuxia. Although this primordial spirit had fused with the hand of karma and had an innate advantage over ordinary cultivators comprehending this divine technique, the divination technique was too profound after all. There was not much difference between 100 years and 10 years. Xiaohua did not make any special progress in his cultivation. Just like the primordial spirit that had merged with the heavenly Tao and had now turned into a real star, although it had changed from formless to corporeal, and even had the profound mysteries of the origin of Earth, Xiaohua still couldn't obtain too much from the heavenly Tao. Just like the mountain peak in front of him that pierced the sky, Xiaohua was looking for a path to climb from the bottom of the mountain. Now he had found it and was climbing, but this mountain was really too big. After climbing for a day, a year, or even 100 years, compared to the entire mountain peak, it was almost the same. Therefore, although Xiaohua's heart seemed to have been hit by a sudden impulse, he still didn't understand what it was, nor did he know whether this feeling was good or bad. Could it be that there's something strange about Bright Moon Lane? Xiao Hua frowned slightly. Looking at Lu Yi, Xianxia, and Xiao Jian who were following close behind him, he pondered, how about not letting them go to Bright Moon Lane? I'll go and take a look myself. But looking at Lu Yi and the others' excited expressions, as if they were also looking forward to the auction, Xiao Hua gave up on the idea. Bright Moon Lane was indeed not far, and they reached it in less than an hour. When he saw the liveliness of Bright Moon Lane, Xiao Hua finally understood Dao Shan's astonishment. It was also on the side of a stream, and this stream was 10 times the size of the one in Seven Suns Monastery. The water of this stream was clear and gurgling. Lotus lanterns were hung on the willows by the shore, and the stream reflected the light of the lanterns. What was special was that there were many different kinds of pleasure boats on the stream. Some had canopies, some didn't, and all of them were hung with lotus lanterns, leisurely drifting on the stream. Not to mention the dancers on the pleasure boats playing the pipa, not to mention the women playing the zither outside the pleasure boats, not to mention the white-robed scholar standing at the bow of the pleasure boats reciting poetry. Just these pleasure boats and lanterns were a beautiful scene that was completely different from the desolate Seven Suns Monastery. Similarly, there was a small bridge that spanned across the stream. Xiao Hua and the others walked to the head of the bridge, and saw a small boat that looked like a fallen leaf flowing under the bridge. They heard the sound of a zither that was even more tinkling than the flowing water, and then smelled the thick fragrance of cosmetics mixed with the faint fragrance of the night sky. The cosmetics came from the dancers who lived in the night, and the fragrance came from the blooming flowers among the green leaves that flowed like a stream. Many of them sighed with emotion. They were all living the same life, but some chose to be drunk, some chose to be pure, some endured starvation for the sake of beggars, and some spent a fortune for the sake of a beauty's smile. However, what made them sigh with emotion was not only that. When they stood at the head of the bridge, there was a huge archway in front of them. It was at least 10 feet tall, and this archway was extremely luxurious. Although they couldn't see clearly what material it was made of in the night, just by looking at the archway itself, they could see that it didn't have any lanterns. Instead, it emitted a faint light under the surrounding lanterns, and this light emitted different colors from different parts of the archway. Even the 3 large words, Bright Moon Lane, on the archway was simply a rainbow color. This rainbow color was different from the usual brilliance of magic treasures that Xiao Hua had seen before. This rainbow color had a kind of domineering, a kind of dazzling feeling, and gave people an indescribable impulse when they saw it. Behind this archway, there was a narrow street that was several feet wide. On both sides of the street were 3-story buildings, and all of them were brightly lit, with the sounds of orioles and swallows dancing. Moreover, looking further, there were several crisscrossing streets, and countless rows of small buildings. Not to mention the incomparable ostentatiousness of this Bright Moon Lane in the night sky. Even the lights of the Bright Moon Lane that were comparable to the natural bright moon reflected in the night sky only made this corner of the Copper Pillar country a nightless place. Xiao Hua and the others stood quietly at the head of the bridge. The spacious bridge was once again filled with people weaving together. Some were walking out of the Bright Moon Lane with drunken smiles, some were hugging beauties, and even more were like Xiao Hua and the others, entering the Bright Moon Lane from the side of the river. In their eyes, they didn't care about the outer appearance of the Bright Moon Lane. They only cared about the inner meaning of the Bright Moon Lane. Let's go and take a look. Xiao Hua used his divine sense to scan the place. There were quite a few places that were unbearable, but Xiao Hua was too lazy to continue looking. After giving an order, he walked down from the bridge. Io, these Taoist masters? How about coming to our top floor to take a look? Just as they walked down from the bridge, a woman with heavy makeup who had been staring at them for a long time already pounced over. She wanted to grab Xiao Hua, who was in front of her, and opened her mouth wide with a smile. The girls in our building love handsome men the most. With a glance, I can tell that this Taoist master and the others are not ordinary. They will definitely be considerate to you. Xiao Hua's face didn't have any expression, as if he didn't see or hear anything. His gaze was very clear as he looked forward. As for the hand that the woman used to grab Xiao Hua's sleeve, she simply couldn't touch Xiao Hua's Taoist robe. A seemingly invisible barrier separated the two, as if the two were not in the same world. This Taoist master. That woman couldn't grab Xiao Hua, so she didn't hesitate at all. She stretched out her hand to grab Xiao Jian, and said respectfully, "Your appearance is comparable to Pan An's. You are the one that my family's girls love. Come, come, come." This servant will introduce you to the #1 courtesan of the Bright Moon Lane. Xiao Jian, who usually looked a bit wretched, coldly looked at that woman. He touched his chest and said coldly, "This Taoist master only has 2 copper coins here. Can the big sister of the top floor see this Taoist master?" Xiao Jian's voice wasn't soft, and the smile on that woman's face slightly stiffened. She immediately threw him a coquettish glance and said with a very charming smile, "This Taoist master is joking with this servant. There are more than 1 Taoist masters and Buddhist masters who come to my top floor. You unworldly experts are the most generous." Last month, there was even a Buddhist master who redeemed the top floor's girl named Chang Mimi. How is it possible that you only have 2 big coins? Girl, have you ever seen a brothel without a purse? Xiao Jian looked at that woman with contempt and patted his own waist. Hee, this Taoist master is actually joking with this servant. That woman's expression didn't change. She threw him a coquettish glance and twisted her slightly fat waist. "I'm ignoring you." As she spoke, she very naturally left Lu Yi and Yuanya and went to welcome the young master in embroidered clothes who came after her. "Brother Taoist, pale-faced young master. Dearest Grandpa Taoist." A series of coquettish complaints made Xiao Hua feel disgusted. He had no choice but to close his ears and calmly walk past the many women. Of course, other than those women who ran out to attract customers, the women in the other pavilions in the depths of Bright Moon Lane didn't seem to be outdone. Even though they saw that Xiao Hua and the others didn't even look at the sides, they still called out, hoping that Xiao Hua and the others would stop walking. "Louis!" Xiao Hua had no choice but to raise his voice and say, "Quickly go and find out where the auction is." "Yes, this servant will go right now." Lu Yi's mouth was also dry. Hearing Xiao Hua's order, he hurriedly ran out from the back. Sigh. No wonder Master Dao Shan was so surprised. Xiao Hua simply stopped walking and turned to look at Xiao Jian. "This place is indeed not a place that we can come to." "Senior must be joking," Xiao Jian said indifferently. "This junior thinks that Bright Moon Lane is no different from Seven Suns Temple. Senior Dao Shan is living here. And these women are also living here. You can't deny the hardships of these women just because of Senior Dao Shan's kindness. Actually, their situation is also very pitiful. Their situation is 10,000 times more sorrowful than Senior Dao Shan's." Xiao Hua stared blankly. He looked at Xiao Jian with interest and asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Xiao Jian's current life and experience seemed to be similar to the women in the brothel. He wore a light veil and was hard to understand. His words made Xiao Hua even more puzzled. Chapter 3253. Senior Dao Shan is free. He is doing what he likes. Although he is poor, he is willing and never tired of it. It can be said that Senior Dao Shan's life is the result of his desire for benevolence. It is also a kind of cultivation for him. Xiao Jian is not afraid at all and says with great vicissitudes of life, "And these women, although they seem to be living a luxurious life, these flashy clothes are unable to cover the tears behind their backs. Senior, do you think they are willing? A pair of jade arms for 1,000 people to sleep on, 2 red lips for 10,000 guests to taste. This kind of life is not something that everyone here can endure. But they have no choice, they have no freedom. They have no choice but to live this kind of life. They have no choice but to give themselves a chance to live. Senior, look behind you. That stream is filled with pleasure boats. Although it is 100 times more beautiful than the stream in Seven Suns Monastery and smells 10,000 times more fragrant, but Junior can say with certainty that there are more bones buried in this stream than in Seven Suns Monastery's stinky river. Those women who are unable to endure the loneliness, unable to endure this birdcage-like life, unable to see their own hope, unable to see a trace of sunshine that belongs to them. Most of them would choose to bury their past in this seemingly clear stream. Senior, they are actually the most pitiful worms. Xiao Jian sighs. Compared to them, Senior Dao Shan is living in an immortal palace. Hee. Xiao Hua laughs and looks at this Taoist who has countless stories and says, "Rather than choosing to be buried here, why not wash away all the dirt? They have the courage to leave this world. Why don't they have the courage to leave Bright Moon Lane? Rather than saying that they are pitiful, it is more like they chose to be pitiful and chose to escape. The heavens have always been merciful and always leave a way out for people. If they don't find the right way out, what can others do?" Senior, leaving this luxury and going from complicated to simple. Is this something that ordinary people can do? Xiao Jian knows that Xiao Hua does not understand and says again, in this bright moon lane, it is extremely difficult to regain one's freedom. Death is much easier than freedom. Perhaps. Xiao Hua had lived for so many years, but he really didn't understand the inner workings of the brothel. Naturally, he didn't understand what Xiao Jian was saying, but he still chose to believe. Being a person, no matter where, is extremely difficult. Taoist priest. Lu Yi ran over from afar, his face covered in makeup. Afraid that he had been taken advantage of by others, he shouted, I've already found out that the auction will be held at Zhaixing Lu Taoist priest. Please follow me there. Zhaixing Lu? Haha. What a big tone. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. Lead the way. This Xiao wants to see what kind of grandeur this Zhaixing Lu has. However, the style of the secular world naturally could not compare to the style of a cultivator. Although there was a tall pavilion that stood out from the rest of the three-story pavilions in Bright Moon Lane, the pavilion was also decorated with flying dragons and flying phoenixes. Xiao Hua did not know which calligraphy master had written the words Star-Plucking Pavilion on the signboard, but when he looked at it, he could not help but feel disappointed. It's only a... Xiao Hua looked at the brightly lit Zhaixing Lu and said indifferently, Immortal Elder. Xiao Jian looked at Zhaixing Lu and seemed to think of something. He frowned and hurriedly said in a low voice, This junior seems to have some impression. This Zhaixing Lu's origin is somewhat unusual. Oh? What's unusual about it? This junior remembers that there seems to be a Zhaixing Lu in the state of Danliang. Xiao Jian said in a low voice. Of course, this matter is too small for this junior to remember clearly. Back then, there seemed to be some alliance that wanted to build this Zhaixing Lu in the state of Danliang. This junior only took a look. As for whether it was built or not, this junior has already forgotten. If it's in the state of Danliang, the state of Bronze Pillar also has it. Maybe the state of Shi and the state of Jiasa also have it. This Xiao understands. Xiao Hua snorted. Who cares about its origin? This Xiao is only here to trade. I don't intend to tear down this Zhaixing Lu. Why won't they let this Xiao in? Moreover, since this Zhaixing Lu is able to sell vitality stones, there must be someone supporting it. Without any origin. How is it possible? Yes, this junior is only reminding senior. Xiao Jian said with a smile. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and looked at Xiao Jian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. If you didn't lose those vitality stones to the escorts, any one of them could be exchanged for a lot of money here. Not only would it allow Master Dao Shan to give out porridge with peace of mind, but it would also allow the girl who you said had a tragic life with no freedom to be redeemed from the brothel. Don't you think it's a pity? Now that I think about it, it is indeed a pity. Xiao Jian didn't hide it and said in a low voice. However, those vitality stones belong to this junior. Whatever this junior does is this junior's freedom. If this junior loses the freedom to choose because of the freedom of those girls, this junior would rather not have such an opportunity. Xiao Hua nodded and didn't want to say anything more. There was a small empty space behind the signboard of Zhaixing Lu. At this time, there were some car doors parked there. There were also some handsome youths dressed in green who were waiting behind the balcony. Seeing Xiao Hua and the others standing at the door, they first chatted for a while before walking in. How could they not know that these were Taoist priests who were participating in the auction? There were already two youths dressed in green who had smiles on their faces and quickly walked up to welcome them. However, before they could open their mouths and before Xiao Hua and the others could get close to the balcony, hiss! A hissing sound like a dragon's roar came from the left side of Xiao Hua and the others. It was the opposite side of where Xiao Hua and the others came from. Not only were the youths in green shocked, even Xiao Hua was stunned. Everyone looked at the source of the dragon's roar in unison and felt even more bewildered. This copper pillar country. Where did the dragon come from? In the night sky, 4 pure white heavenly horses stepped on faint white clouds as if they were descending from the sky. Their bodies flashed with white light as if they were tearing apart the night sky and flying out from the depths of the darkness. Its white mane, which was more than a foot long, swayed with the night wind like a dreamy mist. Its 4 hooves fluttered in the wind, its head proudly raised to the sky, and it's galloping free and easy like a swimming dragon. It really made people wonder if this was a dream encounter. Not only that, behind the 4 heavenly horses, there was a carriage cast from gold. This carriage was also floating in the air. The carriage was 1 zhong in size and there were exquisite patterns on it. Some of these patterns were flowers, some were grass, and some were birds and people. In the center of the 2 sides of the carriage, there were 2 large jade lotus flowers. These jade lotus flowers almost filled up the 2 doors of the carriage. As for the one standing on the carriage and driving the 4 heavenly horses, it was a strong man dressed in golden armor. Dragon. Dragon horse. Xiao Jian, who was beside Xiao Hua, couldn't help but exclaim, This world really has such a precious horse? The golden carriage pulled by the dragon horse was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it rushed to the front of Zhai Xinglu and arrived in front of Xiao Hua and the others. The dragon horse was about to crash into Xiao Hua, but Xiao Hua didn't seem to have any intention of moving out of the way. Taoist. At this moment, the youths in green came to their senses and hurriedly shouted. Hiss. Another 4 dragon-like horse cries sounded at the same time. The sound shook the night sky. The 4 dragon horses stopped abruptly, just a foot away from Xiao Hua. Do you want to die? The strong man dressed in golden armor was furious. With a wave of his hand, a whip flashed and lashed toward Xiao Hua. The strong man was 1 zhong tall and stood on the carriage. The whip actually made a faint whimpering sound in the air, as if it was going to cut off the air. Not good. Several youths in green panicked and cried out in their hearts. They saw the jade lotus on the carriage and already knew who was coming. But they knew that they couldn't stop this whip, so no one dared to speak. A few of the kind-hearted youths had already closed their eyes. They knew that even if it was a stone lion, it would probably be smashed into smithereens by this whip. This seemingly thin and weak young Taoist would probably be smashed into minced meat. Pa! A crisp sound, followed by a sneer. You can come down. Then there was another woo sound, followed by a pang sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. The entire area in front of Zhai Xinglu was deathly silent. This is... The timid youth in green hastily opened his eyes. He looked with some disbelief at the strong man who was also standing on the ground in a daze. The bold youth saw clearly that in the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua, who was standing calmly in front of the dragon horse, had grabbed the whip. Then, Xiao Hua gave a casual tug and the brawny man in golden armor was immediately sent flying from the carriage. Without any resistance, he landed on the ground in front of Zhai Xinglu. How dare you? A cold voice came from the golden carriage. Hiss. The 4 dragon horses stretched out their necks and neighed at the same time. They opened their mouths and bit toward Xiao Hua like real dragons. Humph. Xiao Hua sneered. His figure rushed towards the center of the dragon horses like a ghost. He very cleverly landed between the 2 dragon horses in the middle. Then, he spread his arms and patted the backs of the 2 dragon horses like a great pang spreading its wings. Ow! The 2 dragon horses let out a mournful cry. Their entire bodies fell with Xiao Hua. When their 4 hooves landed on the ground, they trembled violently, as if they were about to kneel down at any time. Damned little Taoist. Along with this cold voice, the door of the golden carriage opened. A young Confucian scholar walked out, holding a folding fan in his hand. His face was filled with shame and anger, and his eyes seemed to be full of spirit, but there was a trace of ruthlessness in them. "Io, young Master Duanmu, you've finally come." Just as this young Confucian scholar was about to walk toward Xiao Hua, an extremely loud and clear voice came from below the signboard of Zhai Xinglu. Then, a similarly dressed middle-aged Confucian scholar quickly walked over. His face carried a smile like a spring breeze. Chapter 3254. When the young master named Duanmu saw this person, he had no choice but to stop and hide the anger on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Brother Zhu. I merely came to take a look. How could I dare to trouble you to welcome me? Young Master Duanmu is an honored guest of Zhai Xinglu." When I heard the neigh of the dragon horses, I knew that young Master Duanmu's golden carriage had arrived. In this world, who else but young Master Duanmu could have dragon horses? Who else could sit in a golden carriage? Brother Zhu chuckled and appeared to be flattering, but his words were laced with an indiscernible flattery. Since young Master Duanmu has arrived, how could I not welcome you? He, I thank Brother Zhu. The ruthlessness in young Master Duanmu's eyes disappeared and he said with a smile, I was originally a bit angry, but with Brother Zhu's arrival, my anger was blown away faster than the wind. I don't know where it went. Haha, many thanks, young Master Duanmu. Scholar Zhu glanced at Xiaohua and said with a smile, unhappiness exists everywhere in this world. However, since everyone is a guest of Jianghu Lu, this happiness naturally has to be extinguished. Don't you think so, fellow immortal? Xiaohua had already retracted his hand when he came out. He slowly walked out from the group of dragon horses. Those dragon horses were obviously afraid of Xiaohua. They actually retreated a few steps. Although they were still as unruly as before, there was a trace of fear in their eyes that understood human nature. When Xiaohua heard Scholar Zhu's words, he cupped his hands with a smile and said, Fellow Immortal Zhu is right. There is no such thing as happiness or unhappiness in this world. It's only a matter of whether someone brings it upon themselves. I only came to Jianghu Lu to broaden my horizons. I won't bring unhappiness upon myself. Haha, fellow Immortal is right. As expected of an otherworldly expert, this one is convinced. Scholar Zhu hastily laughed when he saw young Master Duanmu become unhappy after hearing some of his words. He pulled on young Master Duanmu's sleeve and said, Let's go. I'll take young Master Duanmu away from this unhappy place. Taoist Master, please. Seeing that Xiaohua wasn't stingy with young Master Duanmu, several youths in green clothes hastily and respectfully welcomed him. Although their smiles were similar to before, the fear in their eyes was no longer fake. And lead the way. Xiaohua waved his hand indifferently and glanced at the golden whip that he had just thrown on the ground. The fist-thick whip was curled up like a venomous snake, not moving at all. On the other end of the whip, the burly man in golden armor was standing there in a daze, not moving at all. Just like the whip, he had lost all of his spirit and energy. After Xiaohua followed the green-clothed youth into Jianghu Lu, the burly man laughed coldly. He took off the golden helmet that covered his face, revealing a vicious expression. Then, with a grab, the golden whip landed in his hand. With a casual wave, it streaked across the air like an awakened python and wrapped around Huang Jinjia's waist. Come here. The burly man beckoned to a young man in green who was waiting for him. Yes, the youth in green hurried over and bowed. Master, please drive the carriage and follow me into Jianghu Lu. There's no hurry. It's not like I don't know how to get in. The burly man reached into his chest and took out a jade eye ring. He handed it to the young man and whispered a few words to him. His voice was so low that only the youth could hear it. Seeing the hesitation on the youth's face, the burly man said coldly, If you don't go, I'll get someone else to go. Don't blame me for not giving face to Jianghu Lu. Yes, I know. The youth clenched his teeth and nodded. I'll go now. Good, that's a good boy. I'll dote on you too. The burly man reached out and patted the youth's shoulder. The youth trembled and almost fell to the ground. Not sure if it was because the burly man was too strong, or if the burly man's words were too powerful. Walking past the huge shadow of Jianghu Lu's signboard, Xiao Jian was worried and said softly, Senior, you were a little impulsive just now. Xiao Hua smiled and said curiously, Fellow Taoist Xiao is considered experienced and knowledgeable. You can't be so petty, right? You even approved the construction of Jianghu Lu back then. You were also the ruler of a country. A bitter smile appeared on Xiao Jian's face as he said, Times have changed. I'm now a Taoist priest in dire straits. I don't dare to mention my past bravery. Moreover, this Jianghu Lu is different from Duanmu family. I don't know about Jianghu Lu's background, but Duanmu family's background. Senior isn't afraid? Duanmu family? Xiao Hua's eyes turned as he had a bad feeling in his heart. He said softly, Is this family very powerful? Senior really doesn't know? Didn't you see the 2 jade lotuses on the golden carriage? That's the symbol of Duanmu family. Only the direct descendants of Duanmu family have the right to use this symbol. This time it was Xiao Jian's turn to be shocked. Although this Duanmu family isn't the #1 scholarly family in hidden Immortal continent, but it's still at the forefront of the first class. It can almost be compared to the first-class families. Not to mention that you and I are unable to contend against them in our current situation. Even if we use the power of a country, it would still be hard to match them. Oh, Senior. Please don't blame Junior for being straightforward. Junior can't see through your cultivation, but even if you've reached the 6th or 7th grade of elemental energy, you still wouldn't be a match for Duanmu family. Oh. Xiaohua was even more puzzled. If the family's power is so huge, then what about the scholarly sects? Like Country Shi's Chongyun sect? How many classes are the families divided into? What are the first class? What are the second class? My lord. Xiao Jian, who was at the side, was completely dizzy. He stole a glance to the left and right. There weren't many people who came to Zhai Xinglu. At this moment, there were only a few carriages in this empty space. The youth in green was leading the way in front, so Xiao Jian lowered his voice and said, Senior, you've really been cultivating overseas all this time. But even overseas, hidden immortal continent's 4 major families, Dongfang, Shimin, Nangong and Baiming, have existed since ancient times. How can you not know? Those so-called scholarly sects are merely clowns. How can they be compared to the profound heritage of scholarly families? However, Junior isn't a scholarly cultivator. My Danliang country was also a Dao sect in the past. Junior doesn't understand the specific situation of these scholarly families. I only know that these scholarly families are divided into 9 classes. Each class is divided into 2 levels, the first class and the second class. The 4 major families that Junior mentioned just now are the first class and the second class. Junior doesn't know which ones exactly. These scholarly families are the true masters of hidden immortal continent. Alas, now isn't the time to talk about it in detail. When there's time in the future, Junior will explain it in detail to Senior. Damn it, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. He always thought that scholarly cultivators were similar to Dao sections. Those scholarly sects like Chongyun sect and Tianji sect were the same as the cultivation sects of Xiaoyu continent. They were the mainstream of hidden immortal continent's cultivation. But he didn't expect that this so-called scholarly families were the true behemoths. Sweeping a glance at Xiao Jian, who had a bitter expression on his face, Xiao Hua knew that what he said was the common knowledge of hidden immortal continent. Everyone should know about it, especially cultivators like him. He also couldn't blame Xiao Jian for not reminding him. Anyone who saw that divine dragon horse and that golden carriage wouldn't know that this was the appearance of the peak character of hidden immortal continent. Those people couldn't wait to hide. Instead, he had a dispute with them. Moreover, looking at the appearance of that muscular man wearing golden armor, he didn't seem to be willing to let the matter go. It was really troublesome. Senior. Xiao Jian's previously upright face began to look shifty. He looked left and right and said in a low voice, Junior saw that this Duanmu Gongzi wasn't a broad-minded person. Just now, he was restrained by this Zhu Gongzi and couldn't get angry. But that Zhu Gongzi's meaning was obvious. Since it was Zhai Xinglu's guest, he wouldn't let Duanmu Gongzi take action. But if Zhai Xinglu left, he definitely wouldn't care. Junior saw that the coachman didn't drive the carriage in. Maybe he's doing something outside. We might as well take advantage of this opportunity. Although Xiao Jian didn't say the word slip, Xiao Hua understood. Even Lu Yi's face showed the same expression. Hee hee. Xiao Hua sneered. We came here on behalf of Dao sects. If we don't even enter Zhai Xinglu's door, wouldn't our Dao sect's reputation be thrown away by us? Dao sects? What reputation does Dao sects have? How come I don't know about it? Xiao Jian muttered. Dao sect's reputation is worthless compared to brothel girls, right? What did you say? Xiao Hua frowned. When Xiao Jian heard this, he hurriedly laughed. Hee hee, nothing. Senior, Junior just felt that, compared to your previous cautiousness, is rather different. Is that so? How come this Xiao doesn't know? When you first came to Rivertide Temple, you acted exactly like an ordinary person. Junior even thought that you were sent by someone else. Even when facing the bald donkeys from Shaojin Temple, you were still extremely humble. With your methods of dealing with bandits, you didn't even need to lift a finger. Even that pet beast of yours could completely exterminate the monks from Shaojin Temple. You even used an extremely ugly wooden club to scare them. Xiao Jian laughed. But what about today? Actually, you could have avoided that carriage and even that whip. Especially, even if you took the whip and didn't let go, and didn't throw the coachman off the carriage. Wouldn't that have prevented all of this from happening in the future? Also, you actually rushed into the dragon horse and subdued the dragon horse in front of everyone. This isn't Senior's usual behavior of keeping a low profile. Hiss. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. As a bystander, Xiao Jian saw everything clearly. What Xiao Jian said was the truth. If he had retreated half a step like before, he wouldn't have retreated. As long as he had reason and evidence, he wouldn't have offended this so-called first-rate Duanmu family's young master. However, he actually dragged the coachman off the carriage. He, a Jindan cultivator, actually had to lower himself to the same level as an aura-refining brute. Chapter 3255. Damn it, Xiao Hua scolded. I don't know why, but this Xiao seems to be a bit impatient. Daoist, that coachman and Duanmu Gongzi deserve to die. If the dragon horse didn't stop in time, we would have been injured if not dead. Lu Yi encouraged Xiao Hua from the side. In the marketplace, this little one has seen many hedonistic sons trampling children to death. Hee, if Senior was as young as you, he would naturally be so impulsive. Xiao Jian laughed. But Senior is a successful cultivator, you can't be impulsive. Perhaps, Senior saw Dao Shan's predicament and saw the prosperity of Bright Moon Lane and felt resentment? And that should be the case. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and immediately understood, nodding slightly. Although the reaction of the whip was only a slight tremble, the difference was huge. He had never been impulsive at this moment. He could only explain it this way. Xiao Hua understood, but in reality, was this matter so simple? Was it because of these reasons of material joy and personal sorrow? Then Lu Yi blinked his eyes and muttered in a low voice. Don't care about this. Xiao Hua waved his hand and looked at the Jiaxing Lu that they had already reached. When a horse reaches the mountain, there will be a path. With so many people watching, how can we easily leave? Of course. Xiao Hua changed the topic and laughed. Even if we want to leave, we must first step into the Jiaxing Lu, then we can talk. As he spoke, Xiao Hua's eyes began to look around. Hee, Daoist, you and the others go in first. This little one will look around, or see if there is a back door in this Jiaxing Lu. Lu Yi followed behind Xiao Hua, laughing and saying a few words. He immediately walked to the side and faced a young man in green clothes not far away. Seeing Xiao Hua return to his previous vigilance, Xiao Jian's hanging heart also settled down. Xiao Hua could fly, and he also had an extremely powerful pet to rely on. Xiao Jian, other than the remnants of his divine sense, had nothing else. It was impossible for him to protect himself. If Xiao Hua had a conflict with Duanmu Gongzi, Xiao Hua would bear the brunt of it, followed by Xiao Jian. Therefore, Xiao Jian absolutely did not want Xiao Hua to go against Duanmu Gongzi, no matter from which angle. Oh, this star-picking tower can actually block the probing of divine will. Xiao Hua looked at the huge screen in front of Jiaxing Lu's door and scanned it with his divine perception. He was somewhat surprised. But this seems to be the so-called primordial array of Confucian cultivators? Although it also uses the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the fluctuations are not similar to my Dao sex formation. It looks a little crude. If I were to use the secret art of the sun-shrouding art, this essence formation might not be able to block my spiritual sense. With that thought in mind, Xiao Hua stepped into Jiaxing Lu and his gaze landed on the screen in front of him. Xiao Hua had only been thinking about Jiaxing Lu's primordial array and had not noticed the screen. But when his gaze swept across the screen, he saw specks of starlight and pieces of moonlight falling on the screen like falling frost. His gaze was instantly drawn to it. Moreover, when his gaze landed on the screen, it was as if he saw a giant hand rising from the stars and moon and grabbing at the thousands of stars in the sky. Hiss! Xiao Hua's divine perception naturally could not fall into it, but at this moment, Xiao Hua felt that his divine perception was showing signs of rapidly dissipating. In particular, there were two spots on the screen that immediately alerted Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua could not help but gasp as his heart turned upside down. Although this giant hand cannot be compared to the karmic hand in my space, it is still inferior to the karmic hand in my space. However, The trajectory of this giant hand picking the stars is a little similar. It is even more powerful than the nascent soul hand of the Dao sect on the Dawn Rain continent. This Zhai Xinglu is actually this powerful? Although the nascent soul hand is extremely powerful, that is because the nascent soul communicates with heaven and earth, uses the power of heaven and earth spirit qi. Compared to the abstract, indescribable principles or rules, yes, rules this giant hand contains, it is far inferior. Just a screen from Zhai Xinglu is already so imposing. No, that's not all. Just a screen from Zhai Xinglu in the Copper Pillar country in Yu province is already so powerful. Then what kind of a monster is the so-called alliance? Oh, perhaps. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was somewhat enlightened. The first-class Duanmu family actually gave such face to a scholar like Brother Zhu, to Zhai Xinglu. Perhaps this Zhai Xinglu is controlled by one of the four great families? Also, the light of the stars and moon is being grasped by this giant hand. This rule is so powerful that it seems to be able to absorb the power of the stars and moon. Although I can also absorb starlight from the extraterritorial domain, other than knowing that it can be used in alchemy, I know nothing else. This Zhai Xinglu placing this screen here. What does it mean? Does it mean that they have the ability to use the power of starlight? Hee, Brother Zhu, look. This little Taoist has indeed entered Zhai Xinglu. I knew it. He must be trying to use Zhai Xinglu's power to hide. Only 3 of them came in, and the little fellow is not here. He must have gone elsewhere to gather information. In a rather luxurious room in Zhai Xinglu, young Master Duanmu held a luminous goblet in his hand as he took a sip of the blood-red wine. Scholar Zhu was also holding a goblet of wine. He smiled as he looked at a bronze mirror in front of him. The bronze mirror reflected the scene in front of Zhai Xinglu. Young Master Duanmu, why are you so serious with a little fellow? Scholar Zhu chuckled. It's just a dilapidated Taoist sect and a little Taoist with some strength. Hee. Young Master Duanmu's lips curled into a cold smile. Young Master Zhu, don't underestimate this little Taoist. My Duanmu family's dragon horse is actually so easy to subdue. Didn't you see Qiri and Shouyue nearly kneeling under his arms? Didn't you see Lu Guang and Xiying not dare to provoke him? This little Taoist's body definitely has the strength of 10 dragons and 10 elephants. The Buddhist sect's mighty Vajra? Young Master Zhu was taken aback and asked curiously, I've never heard of any Taoist divine ability of dragons and elephants. This isn't something I should know. Young Master Duanmu shrugged. Actually, to be honest, it was Qiu's rashness. This fellow shouldn't have raised his whip so casually. Hee, as long as young master knows. Young Master Zhu laughed and raised his luminous cup to young Master Duanmu. The two took a sip. What a pity. This little Taoist's luck isn't good. After a mouthful of wine, young Master Duanmu glanced at the bronze mirror and said regretfully, It's fine if he grabbed Qiu's whip, but I would definitely reprimand Qiu. Who wouldn't do such a thing to save face? But he just had to drag Qiu down from the golden carriage. If it was a month ago, it wouldn't have mattered even if he had dragged Qiu down. He's just a golden armored soldier. With young Master Zhu's words, I might not lower myself to the same level as him. Could it be? Young Master Zhu's curiosity grew as he asked curiously. Young Master Duanmu's tone became even more regretful. What a pity. Because of Qiu's loyalty, the clan changed his surname a month ago. Now, Qiu's name is Duanmu Qiu. See. Young Master Zhu sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. He looked helplessly at the bronze mirror and said with pity, Poor little Taoist. This is the face of the Duanmu clan. Even if young Master Duanmu doesn't want to pay attention to it, I'm afraid you can't back down now. What's this little Taoist doing? Why is he standing in front of the screen motionless? However, when young Master Zhu saw Xiao Hua standing in front of the screen and quietly looking at it, he couldn't help but be shocked. The wine in the luminous cup in his hand suddenly spilled out. It was dark red as if blood had dripped onto the thick silk carpet on the ground. What's wrong? Young Master Duanmu was also startled. He glanced at it and smiled. This fellow is probably thinking. Should he go in or go in? Or what should he do? Young Master Duanmu. Unexpectedly, young Master Zhu didn't smile at all. He placed the luminous cup in his hand on the brocade table beside him and bowed solemnly. I have a presumptuous request, but I'm not sure if I should say it. Zhu Qing. Young Master Duanmu saw this and also placed his luminous cup on the brocade table. He said lightly, I've known you for many years and you know my character. Today, I came to Jianghu Lu because of our friendship. If it were any other matter, I would have just laughed it off. But this concerns the reputation of the Duanmu family. I have already made myself clear just now. You just don't want young Master Zhu to speak, right? That scholar named Zhu Qing bitterly smiled. He pointed his finger at Xiaohua and said, If. At this point, Zhu Qing seemed to realize something and shook his head. Forgive me for not being able to tell young master about this. This is Jianghu Lu's internal affairs. Oh. Young Master Duanmu seemed to have understood something. He looked at the bronze mirror and pursed his lips resentfully. How about this, young Master Zhu? On account of our friendship, I promise not to kill him personally. As for others, I can't guarantee it. You also know that Qiu has a bad temper. I came here with him from afar and didn't inform anyone. I'm sure he has already informed someone. Of course, young Master Zhu. I don't want to see Jianghu Lu strike. Good. A smile appeared on Zhu Qing's face. I knew that young Master Duanmu isn't the kind of dandy that people say you are. Haha, whether I'm a dandy or not, I know very well. Young Master Duanmu stretched lazily and said, The auction will start in an hour. I'll go down and take a look first. Okay, Zhu Qing nodded and said, Young Master, please go ahead. I have important matters to attend to and can't accompany you. Go ahead, do your thing. Young Master Duanmu waved his hand casually. I hope that the next time I see you, you won't be in bronze pillar state. Chapter 3256. Thank you for your auspicious words. Zhu Qing smiles, but immediately warns, That's right, today's auction is a bit strange. The items being auctioned are strange. Look carefully before you act. In particular, there are some people I can't see through who are participating in this auction. Don't join in the fun. Even I can't? Young Master Duanmu's face shows a strange expression. That's right, you can't. Because I can't stop them from coming. Zhu Qing says word by word, then hurriedly leaves. Today is really strange. Looking at Zhu Qing's back, young Master Duanmu looks at the bronze mirror again. In front of the screen, Xiaohua has already left. I just came to Jianghu Lu and met the little Taoist who dares to oppose the dragon horse. The auction hasn't even started yet. There's actually something that even young Master Duanmu can't join in on. What kind of world is this? Do they still want people to live? Xiaohua stands in front of the screen and watches the large hand merge the light of the moon and stars into it. The large hand then follows his divine sense and turns into two large words. Yes, in the end, Xiaohua already realized that everything on the screen moves according to his divine sense. Seeing the two large words star and moon appear on the screen and dissipate like stardust, Xiaohua seems to understand something. Star and Moon Alliance. This is the Star and Moon Alliance that Xiao Jian mentioned. Senior. Xiaohua's gaze has yet to move away from the screen when Xiao Jian's voice rings in his ear. Senior. Have you made a decision? Do you want to leave now or wait for Brother Lu to find the back door? You keep standing here, I'm afraid it's not appropriate, right? Oh, Xiaohua comes to his senses and looks up. Indeed, not far from him, the green-clothed youths are looking at him with a smile that isn't a smile. They think that Xiaohua is delaying something. Taoist. It is at this moment that Lu Yi quietly sneaks over and says in a low voice, I've already found out that there's only one entrance to Jianghu Lu. There are no exits anywhere else. In a while, when the auction is over, everyone will have to leave from here. Senior. Let's go. There's no time to lose. Xiao Jian glanced behind him. There, 4 dragon horses had just pulled the golden carriage into the signboard. Under the guidance of 2 green-clothed youths, they were ready to stop in front of the door. And you can go back first, Xiaohua said with a smile. Since this old man is here, I will go and take a look. After saying that, Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and walked towards the side of the screen. All right, Xiao Jian said helplessly. Since Senior isn't leaving, then Junior won't leave either. Junior will go through thick and thin with Senior. Hee, there's no need. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Offending the Duanmu family has nothing to do with you. None of you have any cultivation, so they won't bother with you. I hope so. Xiao Jian smiled bitterly. Senior, you don't know that those playboys love to vent their anger on others. Xiao Hua's brows raised up and he said with a smile. Yeah, you understand this matter best. However, since this Duanmu family is a first-rate family, how could it possibly be so superficial? What could Xiao Jian say? He felt that although Xiao Hua's strength was unfathomable, he might not be as familiar with the human heart as he was. However, he really didn't dare to leave Xiao Hua's side. He didn't dare to take the risk and be killed by that golden-armored man. That fellow was even more powerful than Xianxia. This place is somewhat interesting. Xiao Jian's mind was filled with thoughts. However, when he turned around the screen and saw the situation in front of him, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He saw that this place was about 1 mu in size. It was several times bigger than what he had seen from the outside. Within this 1 mu of space, the first thing to bear the brunt was the star atlas above his head. This star atlas flickered with various colors of light, enveloping the entire hall. Between each starlight, there was a separate grid. This starlight also separated the situation within the grid, making it impossible for the naked eye to see the situation within. What was special was that every starlight that was separated from the grid was rising up and down, like a mist. The entire space looked like it was filled with thousands of starlights, very dazzling and magnificent. Even someone like Xiao Jian was slightly dazed, not to mention Lu Yi and Yuanya. They were like country bumpkins with their mouths wide open and their eyes filled with amazement. It looked as if they wanted to dig out their own eyeballs and throw them into the starlight. Taoist priest, this way please. Since Xiao Hua and the others had moved, the cyan-clothed youth also moved. He politely reminded Xiao Hua and the others, not laughing at Lu Yi and the others' loss of self-control. The cyan-clothed youth pointed to a white jade door. The sparkling and translucent milky white jade was erected at the side of the screen. When the multicolored starlight fell on it, it created ripples of light that covered the area several feet around the white jade door like water ripples. Lead the way. Although Xiao Hua had never been a monarch, he had seen places even more dazzling than this starlight on the Dawn Rain continent. He had only glanced at it once before moving his gaze away. At this moment, he waved his hand and said indifferently, Taoist priest, this white jade door is not something that I can enter. The cyan-clothed youth said apologetically. There are other disciples of Zhai Xing Lu waiting on it. Xiao Hua responded. He took a few steps forward and scanned the white jade door with his divine sense. He stepped inside, actually passing through the stone. This. Xiao Jian hesitated. He timidly released his pitiful divine sense, wanting to check it out. Then, he saw half of Xiao Hua's head poke out from the jade door. He said with a smile, just come in directly. Then that head went back into the jade door. Xiao Jian's heart settled, and he walked in without thinking. As expected, there were no obstacles at all, nor were there any dangers. Xiao Jian only saw a flash of light in front of him, and in front of him was a passage that looked like a galaxy, appearing right under his feet. In front of him was a constellation surrounded by nebulas. Behind Xiao Jian, Yuanya and Lu Yi also entered. The two of them could not help but cry out in surprise. Yeah, Xiao Jian snorted coldly. Don't say that you know this old man. Yes, master. Yuanya forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and respectfully replied. Not far away, a woman in palace attire happened to pass by. Hearing Xiao Jian and Yuanya's conversation, she could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. However, the woman immediately took a deep breath, placed her hands on her waist, and bowed. She respectfully said, Fellow Taoists, if you wish to enter the Star Palace to trade, please pay a low-grade origin stone. Isn't this the auction? Xiao Hua was naturally the first to ask. Reporting to Taoist priest. The woman said with a smile. Our Zhai Xing Lu's auction will be held in Xinglu in an hour. This is only the Star Palace for ordinary transactions. There are many fellow Taoists like you. They did not come to the Star Palace to participate in the auction. Their purpose is to trade with other fellow Taoists. If you want to enter the Star Palace to trade with them, you have to pay a primal stone in exchange for a star token. Only Taoists with star tokens can enter the Star Palace. Ah! A low-grade primal stone. Xiao Jian was flabbergasted. Why doesn't your Zhai Xing Lu rob people? That's too expensive. If I want to trade with others, I can do it outside. Why must I do it in your Zhai Xing Lu Star Palace? Hee, Taoist priest is right. It's only in this Star Palace that no one will rob you. My Zhai Xing Lu can guarantee the safety of the items you trade inside. The woman was not angry at all. Of course, my Zhai Xing Lu cannot guarantee the authenticity of the items you trade. A low-grade primal stone can be traded inside, right? Search the Star Palaces one by one. Xiao Hua asked again. If we also want to make a small Star Palace like this, how many primal stones would we have to pay if we took out our items to trade? 10 low-grade primal stones, the woman answered cleanly. 10 low-grade primal stones. Not 1 mid-grade primal stone? Xiao Hua stared blankly, then understood. The primal stone exchange in Hidden Immortal Continent might be different from Dawn Rain Continent. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out a mid-grade primal stone from the space. He handed it to the woman and said, "Give me 4 star tokens, the kind that can only be traded with others." Yes. Seeing Xiao Hua being so generous, the woman was very happy. But when she took the primal stone from Xiao Hua's hand, she smiled bitterly and said, "If I'm not wrong, Taoist priest should be a mid-grade primal stone. Do you have any low-grade primal stones?" "I don't have enough low-grade primal stones to give Taoist priest." "Oh right." Xiao Hua thought of something and asked, "Can Zhai Xing Lu exchange primal stones for gold and silver?" "Of course." The woman nodded. Could it be that Taoist priest wants to use this primal stone to exchange for some gold and silver? Yes, exchange the rest for silver. Then please wait a moment. The woman said with a smile. I will exchange for you now. However, Zhai Xing Lu takes a 10% cut to exchange for gold and silver. I hope Taoist priest will forgive me. Oh. How much silver can 1 low-grade primal stone exchange for? Xiao Hua, who had always been stingy, felt a little heartache. I'll let Taoist priest know that 1 low-grade primal stone can be exchanged for 10 taels of gold. If Zhai Xing Lu takes 1 tael, Taoist priest will actually get 9 taels of gold. This, outside, 1 low-grade primal stone can be exchanged for 15 taels of gold. Xiao Jian said with some displeasure. Why is your Zhai Xing Lu so shady? Hee, Taoist priest, it's up to you. Hearing this, the woman stood still and looked at Xiao Hua, then at Xiao Jian. This is my Zhai Xing Lu's rule. However, I advise Taoist priest that it's safer to exchange at Zhai Xing Lu. Others may not have so much gold. Go ahead and exchange quickly. Xiao Hua waved his hand, indicating for the woman to leave. Then he glared fiercely at Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian hurriedly nodded, knowing that Xiao Hua hated him for losing those primal stones. Yes, even if 1 low-grade primal stone could be exchanged for 1 tael of gold, how much gold could he exchange for with so many primal stones? He had lost so much gold. Chapter 3257. How many low-grade primeval stones can be exchanged for 1 mid-grade primeval stone? Xiao Hua asked coldly. 100 pieces. Xiao Jian's sweat dripped down immediately. Then you had so many primeval stones. How could you lose them all at once? As expected, Xiao Hua asked. That. Xiao Jian stammered and finally told the truth. At first, it was 1 primeval stone, worth 100 taels of gold, but they didn't want to play with me. In the end, I had no choice but to exchange 1 for 10 taels. 1 taels, after losing a few rounds. After losing a few rounds, they all had primeval stones. Who cares how much gold these primeval stones can be exchanged for? Lu Yi originally didn't know the grades of primeval stones. When he heard that Xiao Jian actually lost primeval stones of unknown grades, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. He stood at the side and muttered. But when Xiao Jian heard this, he slightly straightened his back and said in a low voice, Brother Lu, no matter if those primeval stones are mid-grade or top-grade, They are all mine. As he said this, Xiao Jian stole a glance at Xiao Hua, afraid that Xiao Hua would say something. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's face didn't have any reaction. Xiao Jian was right. These primeval stones were all Xiao Jian's own. What he used them for was his own business. Even if he lost all his money and lived on the streets, that was Xiao Jian's own business. Xiao Hua wasn't Xiao Jian's great-grandfather. Why would he care about this? Lu Yi's heart ached for the gold he had never seen before, so he muttered a few words. Seeing that Xiao Hua ignored him, he immediately shut his mouth. Only Yuanya, from Seven Suns Temple to Bright Moon Lane and finally to Star Plucking Tower, didn't say much. It was as if everything in this mortal world had a huge impact on him. In Longevity Town, he originally thought that he already knew everything, but now he knew that what he knew was just a drop in the ocean. Regardless of whether it was Bright Moon Lane's luxury or Star Plucking Tower's grandeur, they were all things he couldn't even dream of. His eyes only looked at the stars. The starlight was the so-called Star Palace, and it was somewhat blurred. Moments later, the woman returned with a small Qianquan pouch in one hand and 2 tokens in the other. Taoist Elder. The woman did not pass the small Qianquan pouch to Xiao Hua. Instead, she passed the copper-colored token to Xiao Hua and said, "This is the star token that I told Taoist sect is worth 1 low-grade origin stone. You can enter the Star Palace of the other immortal elders to trade with them." Xiao Hua took the star tablet and saw a brilliant star engraved on it. When his finger touched it, a trace of roughness and coolness came from the star tablet. Clearly, the material of this star tablet was also specially made. "And this?" The woman handed another star token to Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "This is a star token that can be used to rent a star palace in my star picking tower. It's worth 10 low-grade primordial stones. Just now, I didn't explain it clearly to Taoist Elder, so I still have to explain it to Taoist Elder. Otherwise, I can't afford to delay Taoist Elder's trade." "Oh." Xiao Hua took the silver star token and played with it for a while. Seeing the 2 brilliant stars engraved on it, he could not see any difference from the bronze star token. He could not help but smile and say, "What's the clue? Lady, please explain it." That bronze star token can only be entered 1 star palace at a time to trade with the immortal elders. If Taoist Elder still wants to trade with other immortal elders, then you can only go to another star palace to trade. Moreover, if Taoist Elder wants something, you can only look for it one by one. The woman's words were clear and her voice was pleasant to the ear. But this silver star token is different. If Taoist Elder takes it, not only can you rent a star palace and wait for other immortal elders to come to trade, you can also write what you want to find on the star token. The contents of the star token can be shown to the immortal elders of the other star palaces. In other words, Taoist Elder can stay in a star palace and know what the immortal elders of the other star palaces want to trade. This saves Taoist Elder the trouble of searching. It's so convenient. Xiao Hua's eyes brighten. Then can this old man also know what is in other people's small Qianquan bag? Of course. The woman pursed her lips and says with a smile, "Other than the things the immortal elders of the star palaces are not willing to show, everything else can be seen." "How do we trade?" Xiao Hua's interest is piqued. How do 2 people in the star palaces trade? This Taoist Elder will have to go by himself. The woman says apologetically, "It's better for the immortal elders to trade with their own hands. If you give it to my Zhai Xing Lu, it will be traded at the auction later." "Okay, this old man wants a silver star token." Xiao Hua nods and says, "This silver star token is really convenient and is really worth 10 low-grade primordial stones." The woman's face shows a smile. She points at the silver star token in Xiao Hua's hand and says, "Taoist Elder's star palace is at Hong 446. Taoist Elder can enter with this star token." Then she passes the small Qianquan bag in her hand to Xiao Hua. Inside are the other 2 star tokens and the remaining gold. "Taoist Elder, please count them." "Hee hee." Xiao Hua laughs and takes the small Qianquan bag. "Miss is really smart. How did you know this old man would definitely want this silver star token?" "More than 90 low-grade primordial stones and 10 low-grade primordial stones for convenience. Anyone who hears this will be moved. Don't you think so?" The woman doesn't hide it and says with a smile, "Just now, this servant left in a hurry and didn't have time to tell you. Now that this servant has said it, won't Taoist Elder understand?" Xiaohua laughs loudly. That's right, back in the Xiaoyu continent, one mid-grade primordial stone could only be exchanged for 10 low-grade primordial stones. Now, he can exchange for 100 in one go. Taking out 10 for convenience, Xiaohua can really accept it. He doesn't even have the interest to count the remaining gold. With a wave of his hand, he wants to put the small Qianquan bag away. This time, the woman is very anxious and says embarrassedly, Taoist elder, this small Qianquan bag is my Zhai Xinglu's public use. It doesn't belong to this servant. Taoist elder, please take away the things inside and return the small Qianquan bag to this servant. Hee, this old man is used to taking it. Xiaohua smiles embarrassedly and puts the things inside his space. He passes the small Qianquan bag to the woman and says with a smile, How many primordial stones is this small Qianquan bag? How about this old man give you primordial stones? The woman takes the small Qianquan bag and says with a smile, My Zhai Xinglu also has things for sale in the Star Palace. The small Qianquan bag and other items should be inside. It's in sky number 1. If Taoist elder is interested, you can go take a look. In addition, the location of each Star Palace and even the Star Palace that Taoist elder rents are all in this star token. Taoist elder can use Taoist's divine sense to check it. Xiaohua raises his eyebrows and says curiously, Could it be that the star tokens of Taoist, Confucian, and Buddhist are different? It's the same. The woman replies, This star token can be inspected by divine sense, Buddhist awareness, eye-clearing technique, and even primordial thoughts. See? Xiaohua is slightly shocked. He didn't expect this star token to be so powerful. Xiaohua passes the other 3 bronze star tokens to Xiao Jian and the other 2. However, he suddenly thinks of something and hurriedly asks, That's right, can this star token hide one's appearance? Of course it can. The woman says proudly, As long as you trade in my Zhai Xinglu, this star token can attract starlight and hide Taoist elder's appearance. No matter what Taoist elder trades, it will be impossible for others to know. Good, Xiaohua claps his hands. While praising in his heart, he becomes even more curious about the Star-Moon Alliance. The auction on the Dawn Rain continent doesn't seem to be done so well. The woman keeps the small Qianquan bag and places her hands on her waist. She says with a smile, This servant wishes Taoist elders a smooth trade in my Zhai Xinglu and a successful one. After saying that, the woman leaves very obediently and doesn't stay for a moment longer. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you can take a look around yourself. Xiaohua looks at the star path under his feet and then looks at the stars one by one. He says, If there's anything you like, you can come to Hong 46's Star Palace to find this Xiao. But Lu Yi stares blankly at the side and says in a low voice, Taoist elder, where is Hong 46? These stars don't look any different. Wait a moment. Xiaohua takes the silver star token and infuses it with his divine sense. Sure enough, inside the star token is a star chart similar to the Star Palace in this space. Heaven 1, Earth 2, Mystic 3, Yellow 4 are all marked. And not far away, the one with the special word is Hong 46. Xiaohua doesn't know how to explain it to Lu Yi. He passes the star token to Xiao Jian and says, Take a look for yourself and come find this Xiao in a while. Yes. Xiao Jian takes the star token and infuses it with his divine sense. After a while, he withdraws his divine sense with a shocked expression on his face. Although he was once the ruler of a country, he has never seen such a scene before. Xiaohua takes the star token from Xiao Jian, looks at Xiao Jian with interest and asks, Did you see it clearly? Junior understands. Xiao Jian says respectfully, If Junior needs anything, I will definitely find Senior. All right, Xiaohua waves his hand, turns around and walks towards Hong 46 with large strides. As he walks, he says, This Xiao also wishes you to find what you want. That's right. Xiao Jian only had his spiritual force but no cultivation. Although Xiaohua didn't investigate his situation, it was obvious that Xiao Jian's cultivation had been crippled. Xiao Jian probably came to Bright Moon Lane in Bronze Pillar State to find a way to restore his cultivation. However, Xiaohua really doesn't understand. Since he already has primeval stones, he might be able to find a spirit pill similar to the heavenly pill in this auction. Why was Xiao Jian able to lose all of his primeval stones in one night? Xiaohua didn't use any flying talisman, but as he takes large strides, Thousands of stars flashed from afar and gathered under his feet, like stars surrounding the moon, sending him forward. Xiao Hua was a Jindan stage cultivator who had flown in the sky and experienced the heavenly Dao starry sky. Walking on this kind of star chart, he felt relaxed and happy. How could Yuan Ye and Lu Yi, who had never cultivated before, be fascinated by it? Chapter 3258. The star path was winding, and after a star fell, Xiao Hua saw a scholar wearing black clothes walk out with a smile on his face. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and walked over with a silver star card in his hand. When Xiao Hua was about a foot away from the star cluster, he saw a smoke-like star dust rush out from the star cluster and land on the star card in Xiao Hua's hand. Puff! A silver brilliance burst out from the star token, completely covering Xiao Hua. At the same time, a thin vortex appeared in the middle of the star token. This vortex turned into a star bridge in a moment, and specks of starlight emerged from the vortex and fell under Xiao Hua's feet. When Xiao Hua's feet moved slightly, the star bridge automatically retracted and took Xiao Hua into the star cluster. After entering the star cluster, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. It was several feet wide and looked like a study room. Inside the study room, not only were the 4 treasures of the study placed on the desk, there was also a bookcase and a bed in front of the window. There was even a palm leaf fan placed in the corner of the study room. However, through the window of the study room, there was no scenery outside. "Fellow Immortal, please." A voice came. In front of the empty desk, a ray of light appeared and slowly fell from top to bottom. Immediately, a silver human figure formed by countless star dust gradually appeared. The voice came from the mouth of this human figure. "Fellow Immortal." Xiao Hua looked down and sure enough, he had also turned into a human figure formed by silver stardust. He smiled in his heart and cupped his hands in greeting. That person stretched out his hand and said, "Fellow Immortal, please sit. I wonder what Fellow Immortal has taken a fancy to?" Seeing that person sit down, Xiao Hua also sat on a chair not far from the desk and said with a smile, "Fellow Immortal, what do you have here?" Fellow Immortal also has a silver figure. "Didn't you also rent a star palace?" That person asked curiously. "It's inside Fellow Immortal's star palace." Xiao Hua didn't hide it and said with a smile, "Hee, I just came in and haven't entered the star palace yet. I just happened to pass by here, so I came in to take a look. If Fellow Immortal has something good, I'll definitely buy it. It's also good to have a prize." When that person heard this, he smiled and said, "Fellow Immortal really has vitality stones. You're only renting the Star Palace for 2 hours, and there's only an hour left before the auction starts. Instead of going to your own Star Palace to look at other people's things, you're here to stroll around. Forget it, this is what I want to trade this time, take a look." As he spoke, that person pointed with his finger. A book flew out from the desk and landed in front of Xiao Hua. "Many thanks." Xiao Hua took it and was about to open it, but the book flashed and a string of words flowed on the book. It turned out that this book was just a decoration. "Oh, I understand." Xiao Hua's eyes focused on the contents of the book, but he suddenly realized something in his heart. This so-called Star Palace should be a small illusion array. Everything can be arranged according to Master's wishes through the Star Tablet. This book. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and saw that the contents of the book were either calligraphy or painting, ink brushes, and even rice paper. He couldn't help but stare blankly. What use did he have for this thing? He originally wanted to ask, but there wasn't enough time, so he didn't dare to delay and hurriedly looked at the back. Fortunately, after the 4 treasures of the study, there were some spiritual herbs and spiritual pills. Of course, the medicines written on the book weren't Taoist medicinal pills. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua could understand the names of these medicines, but he didn't know the specific effects. He simply stopped looking and handed the book to that person, saying with a smile, "Fellow Immortal, you've made ample preparations for this transaction." "Hee, Fellow Immortal, are you different?" That person took the book and said with a smile, "I wonder what Fellow Immortal has taken a fancy to." "Fellow Immortal, do you have the extreme magnetic origin light?" Xiao Hua asked. That person was obviously stunned. After a moment he asked curiously, "What's the extreme magnetic origin light?" Hee, forget it. Xiao Hua stood up, If fellow Immortal doesn't have it, then forget it. I really haven't heard of this thing before. I'm very sorry. That person didn't get angry. He also stood up and said with a smile, however, fellow Immortal, do you have the 1,000-year-old perpetual morning grass? If you do, I can pay a high price for it. Perpetual morning grass? Xianxia frowned. There were countless strange flowers and herbs in his space, but he really hadn't heard of this thing before. However, he immediately understood and said with a smile, I do have some spiritual herbs here, but I don't understand plants and vegetation. I wonder which one fellow Immortal is talking about? Oh, I'm talking about this thing. That person waved his hand, and a silver ball of light appeared on his hand made of stardust. Then, that person pointed at this ball of light, and a ball of light rushed out from it and landed on the wall of the study. A picture scroll appeared on the wall, and it was precisely a stalk of exquisite grass. Hee, so it's exquisite grass. Xianxia understood. If this person in front of him was a cultivator, he would probably be at the peak of the qi refining stage. He should be using this exquisite grass to build his foundation. Xianxia waved his hand, and a 2,000-year-old exquisite grass was taken out from the space. He handed it to that person with a smile and said, What a coincidence, I have a 2,000-year-old exquisite grass here. I wonder what fellow Immortal is willing to exchange for it? That person's body trembled a bit. He impatiently stretched out his hand and took the exquisite grass. After identifying it, he hurriedly said, Fellow Immortal, I will give you 10 high-grade primordial stones. What do you think? What? 10 high-grade primordial stones? Xianxia almost cried out in shock. That person said very embarrassedly, I know this number is a bit low. Then, how about 11 high-grade primordial stones? This is the most that I can take out. Of course, this is still not enough for a 2,000-year-old perpetual sorrow grass. But I only need a 1,000-year-old one. Xianxia smiled bitterly. If this 2,000-year-old exquisite grass was in the EG of the Dawn Rain continent, wouldn't it be worth 1 top-grade primordial stone? How come it was only 10 high-grade primordial stones here? The difference wasn't small at all. Seeing that Xianxia was still hesitating, that person took the booklet again and handed it to Xianxia, saying, How about this, fellow Immortal, take a look again. You can choose anything inside. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, I have all the 4 treasures of the study in here. Do you have any materials for refining? Oh right, or cultivation methods. No matter if it's Confucian, Buddhist, or Taoist, they're all fine. Oh, so fellow Immortal wants these. That person understood. He picked up the booklet and pointed at it again, saying, I have some materials for refining imperial tools here. However, they're not particularly precious and aren't worth many primordial stones. As for cultivation methods, I really don't have them here. Xianxia picked up the booklet and took a look. Indeed, the materials inside were all ordinary materials. He didn't fancy them either. Fellow Immortal. Xianxia was helpless. He handed the booklet to that person and shook his head saying, These things, they're really not worth primordial stones. Fellow Immortal. Fellow Immortal. That person almost stepped forward and pulled Xianxia, saying with a smile, How about I exchange all of these with fellow Immortal? All of them? Xianxia was stunned. That person heard that there was hope and said with a smile, Yes, although these things are worth close to 20 high-grade primordial stones, but I really need this endless sorrow grass. If you don't mind, you can take all of these things. Ha ha ha. Xianxia appeared stunned and then laughed loudly. Xiaohua's laughter was really somewhat unruly, causing that person to be somewhat at a loss. He looked at Xiaohua very strangely. After the time it took to finish half a cup of tea, Xiaohua stopped laughing and said, How about this, fellow Immortal? I don't want these things anymore. Why don't you see if there are any other strange things? If it's possible. I don't want these things anymore. Strange things? That person was even more stunned. He thought for a moment and said, You mean as long as it's strange, it's okay? Of course. Xiaohua nodded. Yes, as long as it's strange and of unknown origin. It's okay. Strange and of unknown origin. That person pondered for a moment and seemed to have a plan. He nodded and said, I understand. Can you wait for a moment? Sure. Xiao Hua was happy. He likes strange things the most. Sure enough, that person went out for a moment and came back. He took out a jade box and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying, "This thing belongs to a good friend of mine. Take a look. If it's okay. As long as it's strange and of unknown origin, I like it." Xiao Hua was very expectant. He reached out his hand and said with a smile, "This thing can't be said to be strange and of unknown origin." That person looked at Xiao Hua expectantly and said in a low voice. Xiao Hua opened the jade box and took a look. He hurriedly closed it and waved his hand to put it into the space. He said with a smile, "Not bad. It's this kind of thing of unknown origin that I like the most. That mournful everlasting grass is yours." "Thank you very much, fellow immortal." That person was very happy and cupped his hands in thanks. Hee. Does fellow immortal's friend still have this thing? If there's more. Xiao Hua asked with a smile. That person hurriedly waved his hand and said, "For this kind of thing of unknown origin, it's already rare to have one. How can there be more? Fellow immortal. If you still want it, you can tell me in the Star Palace." Xiao Hua stood up and walked out of the Star Palace. He said while walking, "This thing. I don't dare to write it on the Star Palace." That's right. That person smiled as he watched Xiao Hua walk out. He hurriedly waved his hand and the entire study room immediately turned into nothingness. It was a starry night sky and the human figure formed by the stardust had completely turned into a middle-aged scholar. The smile on that person's face had already disappeared. He looked at the small Qianxia bag in his hand and said coldly, "If you want to get the Buddhist sex Saraira, you naturally can't write it on the Star Palace. This person actually has a 2,000-year-old mournful everlasting grass, and also wants the Buddhist sex Saraira. I'm afraid he's a monster from somewhere." Today in Bright Moon Lane, there are a few Buddhist sex senior monks. This little one should leave early. Chapter 3259. That's right. How could Xiao Hua not laugh? Since a 2,000-year-old Linglong grass was only worth 10 high-grade spirit stones, and there were so many things in this person's book that were only worth 20 high-grade spirit stones, then, to Xiao Hua, the Linglong grass was not worth any spirit stones. But obviously, the spirit stones in Xiao Hua's space could be exchanged for many things, right? If not for the fact that the lightning sound transmitting talisman could reach the Dawn Rain continent, Xiao Hua would definitely frantically send a sound transmitting talisman to his friends on the Dawn Rain continent. "The people here are stupid and the spirit stones are few. Come quickly." What was special was that a Linglong grass could be exchanged for a Linglong grass. This was something that Xiao Hua would never have dreamed of in the Dawn Rain continent. Others might not be able to use this Linglong grass, but Xiao Hua could use it. He had the great strength Vajradharma body cultivation technique. This thing could devour the Linglong grass of the Buddhist sect's eminent monks, so there was no need for any cultivation. The heavenly laws embodiment technique and the great strength Vajra Dharma body were combined slightly, making the cultivation of the Dharma body much easier. Xiao Hua's heart was incomparably refreshed. He walked out of the Star Palace and hurriedly rushed into his own Star Palace. After entering with the help of the Silver Star token, he did not set up any background and hurriedly pointed at the star token. A mirror like the full moon flashed in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Xiao Hua pointed at it, and pieces of words flashed across the mirror. Starting from Tion E and Tion Air, all the things that had been announced in the Star Palace and had not been traded were revealed. Sigh. Xiao Hua looked at it for a moment and felt somewhat helpless. The contents inside were no different from what he had seen just now. The only extra things were the names, but most of them were useless to Xiao Hua. This star-plucking tower is still not considerate enough. If they could list all the things that I like and not reveal the rest, that would be the best. These 10 low-grade spirit stones were spent in vain. Forget it. Xiao Hua waved his hand and pointed at the silver star token. That star token gave birth to a ball of light, and another mirror like the full moon appeared beside the previous one. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it, and a few large words appeared on the mirror. Haha, I'm afraid this is the least amount of content in the star-plucking tower's star-plucking tower. Of course, there were only strange items, and items of unknown origin. There were only these words, nothing else. Of course there were the requirements but also the strangest. Demon core? Jianghu Xiaohua waved his hand, and the contents of the mirror disappeared. It should have been sent to the other star palaces. Xiaohua's gaze swept across the mirror, and the words, Yao Core, appeared in the flipping pages of the mirror. Seeing these words, Xiaohua slapped his forehead and said with realization, "Damn it, that's right. This is the 3 continents of the hidden immortal continent, the pure land of ultimate bliss, and the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Since there are relics, there must be Yao cores. Since there were demon cores, then there must be a pill formula for using demon cores to refine medicinal pills. Since this Xiao was able to obtain some pill formulas in the QC, there will definitely be some here as well. However, Taoism has already declined here. Don't tell me that even the cultivation methods have disappeared?" At this time, Xiaohua's heart was in a mess. Thinking of the cultivation method, he hastily pointed his hand. Just as he was about to add something to the mirror, he suddenly felt the silver star card tremble. A door appeared in the starry sky before him. "Oh, it's time for someone to come." Xiaohua came to his senses and pointed his hand at the star card. Sure enough, the door opened and a human figure made of stardust walked in. That person casually glanced at it and said with a smile, "Fellow Immortal is indeed different. Unexpectedly, you didn't arrange anything in the Star Palace. This is really unexpected." "Hee, this one just came in and was too lazy to arrange anything," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Fellow Immortal is the first one to come to this one Star Palace. Hee, this one has already completed the transaction. I was just preparing to tidy up and participate in the auction." That person said with a smile. "Seeing that Hong Siliu beside me actually sent out such a strange message, this one naturally had to come and take a look." "That's good." Xiaohua pointed his hand at the star card and 2 stone chairs appeared. He sat on one first and raised his hand to indicate, "Fellow Immortal, please take a seat. I wonder if Fellow Immortal has any strange or unknown items." "Fellow Immortal, I'm afraid this is the first time you are participating in this star-picking towers transaction?" That person said with a smile. Xiaohua rolled his eyes. He knew that he had already made a fool of himself. Nevertheless, he was natural and unrestrained as he nodded his head. That's right. If Fellow Immortal has any advice, this one will be eternally grateful." "I don't dare to say advice." That person also sat down and said with a smile, "Fellow Immortal only said that you have strange and unknown items, but you didn't say what you are going to exchange for them." Strange and unknown items. To be honest with Fellow Immortal, even this one knows that they have some value. If Fellow Immortal only wants to exchange for them with those primordial stones, this one also can't take out these things. "See." Xiaohua slapped his forehead and came to a realization. He said with a smile, "Fellow Immortal is right. This one was careless. Next year, I just happened to obtain some old spiritual herbs and have been saving them up until today. I want to exchange them for some useful things here." As he said this, Xiaohua hurriedly pointed his hand at the star card and added another sentence, "I have all kinds of spiritual herbs for exchange." When that person heard that it was spiritual herbs, he was obviously very interested and asked anxiously, "What kind of spiritual herbs does Fellow Immortal have?" Xiaohua smiled. "It should be what Fellow Immortal wants to exchange with this one, or what kind of spiritual herbs does Fellow Immortal want?" To be honest with Fellow Immortal, this one was lucky and obtained some spiritual herbs. Even I don't know the names of many of them. AI. This one really doesn't have anything. I already knew that Fellow Immortal has spiritual herbs here. Just now. That person was actually very regretful. Forget it. Fellow Immortal, you always have something good, right? The range of your strange items is too big. Can you be more specific? Cultivation methods. Xiaohua decided to get straight to the point and asked, "Does Fellow Immortal have cultivation methods of Confucianism, Buddhism or Taoism?" Fellow Immortal is joking, right? That person stared blankly. What do you want these cultivation methods for?" This is this one's business. Fellow Immortal doesn't seem to need to know, right? Xiaohua said with a smile. If Fellow Immortal has these cultivation methods, This one can consider exchanging spiritual herbs with you. AI. That person shook his head slightly. This one naturally can't give you my cultivation methods. As for the extra cultivation methods, this one also didn't expect that someone from Star Picking Tower would want them, so I didn't take them. However, if fellow Immortal wants to obtain Taoist cultivation methods, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Ah? You? How did you know that this one wants Taoist cultivation methods? Xiaohua almost jumped up from the stone chair. He had concealed it for a long time, but it was still exposed. That person said indifferently, if this one tells you the reason, would fellow Immortal consider exchanging with this one? Good. First tell me what spiritual herbs you want. Xiaohua agreed. 500 years old dragon beard grass. That person was overjoyed and quickly said, does fellow Immortal have it? Xiaohua naturally had dragon beard grass in his space, but he didn't know if this person wanted it or not. When he took out a 300 years old dragon beard grass, that person was already extremely happy. It's actually very simple. Fellow Immortal just came in and didn't carefully look at the list of Star Picking Tower, Star Picking Tower, Star Picking Tower. There are many cultivation methods of Confucianism. Cultivation methods of Confucianism are very common in my bronze pillar state. As long as you have the aptitude, you can cultivate them. As for Buddhist cultivation methods, fellow Immortal doesn't know? Although my bronze pillar state doesn't allow Buddhist sects to enter and no Buddhist temples are open, in the other countries of Yu province, as long as there is a temple in the capital city, Buddhist cultivation methods can be obtained for free. Ah! Xiaohua was dumbfounded, but after thinking about it carefully, what this person said was very reasonable. The hidden immortal continent was originally the foundation of Confucian cultivators, so the cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators naturally had to be popularized. And if the Buddhist sect wanted to infiltrate the hidden immortal continent, then the cultivation methods of the Buddhist sect naturally had to be followed in. High-level cultivation methods would not be leaked out from the pure land of ultimate bliss, but ordinary cultivation methods would definitely be offered as a gift, and they would even pay for it. Only the Taoist techniques that fellow Immortal wants. TSK, within the hidden immortal continent, yes, even within the pure land and the thousand demons sacred realm, techniques that are below the second grade of elemental energy will definitely not appear in the Star Plucking Tower. This is because Confucianism and Buddhist sects have already made it clear that the most basic Tao cultivation methods are not allowed to be traded. That person continued, even if it appears in the auction, it is only at the 4th or 5th grade of origin energy. As far as I know, it is not allowed to be sold. See. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He finally understood the strangeness of this matter. That's right, not allowing the existence of basic cultivation methods, naturally it would stop the development of Taoism. Without the existence of high-level cultivation methods, those Taoism cultivators also wouldn't have the opportunity to cultivate to the peak. Looks like his idea of collecting cultivation methods was wrong. Fellow Immortal, what do you want to exchange for the dragon beard grass? Xiaohua understood and didn't delay any longer. He asked somewhat gloomily. That person took out a small Chenkuan pouch from his sleeve and handed it over to Xiaohua, saying, I only have these here. Fellow Immortal, take a look. What do you think? That's all. Xiaohua looked at the brush, ink, paper and inkstone inside the pouch. There were also some ordinary materials. He took them all in one go. This dragon beard grass is fellow Immortal's. Also, many thanks for fellow Immortal's guidance. Haha, many thanks fellow Immortal. That person was very happy and bowed to thank him. You're welcome. Xiaohua was just about to return the bow when he saw a flash of silver light in the entire star cluster. Soon after, a sweet voice sounded, Fellow Immortal, because a very rare item might be delivered a bit late, the auction will be delayed by 2 hours. Fellow Immortal in the Star Palace, your star tablet will be delayed by 2 hours. Hi, that's good. That person laughed bitterly. This one hurriedly completed the transaction. Star Picking Tower has delayed the time. Why would this one be delayed by 2 hours? Forget it, fellow Immortal. This one will take his leave. This one will go take a look elsewhere. Chapter 3260. After that person left, the time it took to brew a cup of tea passed, but no one came over. Xiao Hua was rather waiting for the rabbit to appear on the surface of the mirror. Suddenly he stood up and said to himself, "Hey hi, I've made a mistake. This isn't Daybreak Continent's e.g. There are no stalls here. I only said that I wanted to trade strange things of unknown origin. Not to mention that the cultivators here might not have these things. Even if they did, they would probably have a guilty conscience. Also, I only said that there were various kinds of spirit herbs, but I didn't write down what kind of spirit herbs they were and what year they were. Who would believe me? Who knows? Others might even think that it was a trap. Forget it, it's better to take the initiative." Thinking about this, Xiao Hua immediately came out of the star palace, looked left and right, and walked towards the nearest star cluster. Not long after, Xiao Hua came out again and entered another star cluster. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua had actually entered and exited 10 star palaces. With these 10 star palaces to trade, Xiao Hua gradually gained experience. This star-plucking tower's trade was different from EG's. On one hand, star-plucking tower admittedly protected the privacy of the people trading, but on the other hand, it also concealed the openness of EG's trade. Of course, star-plucking tower also had the information on the mirror, but after all, it was just words, and was different from seeing it with one's own eyes. Xiao Hua's previous method of waiting for the rabbit to appear was really not suitable. Now, as soon as Xiao Hua entered the Star Palace, he first asked if they were willing to trade spirit herbs, then asked if there were any strange things in their small Qianquan bag, and the last sentence was, "Fellow Immortal, you and I are fated. How about this, everything in your small Qianquan bag, including your small Qianquan bag, would you like to trade with me?" Within the 10 Star Palaces, 8 cultivators were dumbfounded, and the other 2 really didn't have anything strange to take out. Xiao Hua didn't even say the last sentence. Out of the 8 cultivators, 5 of them wanted spirit grasses and 3 of them wanted spirit stones. Xiao Hua didn't lack these 2 things. Xiao Hua was like a whirlwind sweeping through the 8 Star Palaces, sweeping away all the items that the cultivators wanted to trade. And this wind was spreading to the other Star Palaces. It seemed that Xiao Hua had suffered a great loss in this sort of transaction. Of the first 8 Star Palaces he had traded, the vast majority were things that ordinary Confucian cultivators could use, such as low-level imperial tools and medicines, things that Xiao Hua had no use for. However, he had also collected some rare qi refining materials, 2 Yao cores, half a Saraira, and even a damaged magic tool. And Xiao Hua had only spent some middle-grade spirit stones, not even enough for a top-grade spirit stone. There were also a few hundred-year-old spirit herbs. This was much more effective than waiting for the rabbit to appear. Cough cough, don't forget, Xiao Hua even got 8 small Qianquan bags. After Xiao Hua made another 20 or so transactions, he finally caught a big fish. He found an incomplete jade pendant, and it actually recorded a gold core cultivation method. After waiting for another 10 or so times, Xiao Hua obtained a white bone. Although this white bone wasn't the huge white bone in Xiao Hua's space, Xiao Hua heard that the person had also seen a huge white bone, so he didn't hesitate to spend a middle-grade spirit stone and leave that person's information. By the time Xiao Hua met Xiao Jian and the other 2 on the Star Road, nearly half an hour had already passed. Xiao Hua's harvest was very bountiful. Not to mention obtaining more than a dozen Sarairas of different colors, not to mention several damaged artifacts, not to mention dozens of rare materials for refining artifacts. Just the nascent soul cultivation methods recorded in the 3 jade eyes made Xiao Hua smile from ear to ear. Of course, these cultivation methods were all incomplete without exception, but this was nothing to Xiao Hua. Xiao Jian and the other 2 were also happy to see Xiao Hua, but seeing Xiao Jian's somewhat disappointed expression, they knew that what he was looking for wasn't there. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua took out a small Qianquan bag and handed it to Xiao Jian, saying, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm afraid that what you want will appear in the auction later. How about this? Help this Xiao do some things, and if it appears in the auction, this Xiao will buy it for you." Xiao Jian hurriedly took it and asked, "How can this junior help senior?" Xiao Hua told Xiao Jian what he was thinking, and finally said, "With your knowledge, you won't suffer a loss. As long as it's something that my Taoist sect can use, you can take it. Lu Yi and Yuan Ya. Give them a spiritual grass each time. If you can exchange it, then exchange it all. If you can't, then forget it." "Yes, this junior understands." Xiao Jian nodded, and used his weak divine sense to scan the small Qianquan bag, and an extremely shocked expression appeared on his face. Even if he was the king of the single Yang country, he had never seen so many spiritual grasses. Come back before the auction. Xiao Hua waved his hand and let them go. He turned around and headed towards the Heavenly One-Star Palace where Zhai Xinglu was located. The Heavenly One-Star Palace where Zhai Xinglu was located was very dazzling. It was at the center of the entire star map, and that round star cluster was like a bright moon. Seeing two cultivators wearing scholarly robes enter at the same time, and a moment later, a big man wearing embroidered robes came out. Xiao Hua understood that this Heavenly One-Star Palace should be different from ordinary star palaces. When he entered with the silver star token, he discovered that inside the star palace was another Zhai Xinglu. This Zhai Xinglu was divided into 3 floors, and on each floor, there were some young men in black and women in palace attire greeting guests. The so-called guests were like Xiao Hua, and they were all in human form piled up with stardust. The human form was divided into bronze and silver, and there were even a few golden ones. Xiao Hua's figure had just entered the star palace when a young man in black immediately came to greet him, and respectfully saluted, saying, "Junior 307, what can I do for Senior?" "You don't have a name?" Xiao Hua asked with interest. 307 smiled and said, "Junior naturally has a name, but in this Heavenly One-Star Palace, I can only be called 307. May I know what Senior wants to buy in this Zhai Xinglu?" Xiao Hua looked up and asked with a smile, "First, tell this old man what you have in this star palace." "I'll let Senior know." 307 replied, "The Zhai Xinglu of the Heavenly One-Star Palace is divided into 3 floors. The first floor is for making scrolls, immortal medicines, swords, and imperial tools. There are also the 4 treasures of the study, all kinds of spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits, and also all kinds of materials. The second floor is for making scrolls, immortal medicines, and imperial tools. There are even some Buddhist tools and Taoist tools. As for the third floor, in addition to Confucian cultivation methods, there are also prescriptions for refining immortal medicines and imperial tools. Of course, other miscellaneous things are also sold on the third floor." "And?" Xiao Hua nodded. "Does the Heavenly One-Star Palace only accept primeval stones?" "Of course not." 307 smiled and said, "If Senior doesn't have enough primeval stones, you can naturally exchange with other things. This one is responsible for the evaluation of these things." "Very good." Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, "Lead this old man to the first floor where the spiritual herbs are sold." "Senior, please." 307 stretched out his hand and said, "Junior will lead the way." "And?" Xiao Hua nodded and followed 307 to the front of the Zhai Xinglu. On the first floor, there were more than a dozen doors that were exactly the same. All of them were engraved with star patterns. 307 casually walked in front of one of the doors. Without even looking, he pushed the door open and said respectfully, "Senior, please." "Hee, it seems like these doors are just for show." Xiao Hua took a look and saw that there was only starlight shining through the doors. He couldn't see anything inside clearly and asked with a smile. 307 replied, "Senior's words are correct. My Zhai Xinglu has arranged more than 400 rooms on the first floor for guests. If there were 400 doors here, wouldn't it be a joke? These random doors all lead to a single room, and the things in each room are the same, so there's no need to choose." As he spoke, Xiao Hua had already stepped into the room. This room was similar to the star palace that Xiao Hua and the others were in. It didn't have a specific shape and size, only an empty starry sky. Xiao Hua and 307 stood alone in the sky. "Senior, what kind of spiritual herbs do you need? Junior can help you choose." 307 slightly stepped forward and took out a thumb-sized star tablet. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen starlight flashed around the two people. At the place where the starlight came from, a jade box appeared. Clearly, there were spiritual herbs inside. Xiao Hua smiled and gestured with his hand. The jade box closest to him landed in his hand. Xiao Hua casually opened it to take a look, then placed it back in the same place. After looking around, he asked, "Are the spirit herbs in Zhai Xinglu ready?" "Ready?" 307 stared blankly. He didn't understand Xiao Hua's question that was so different from others. However, he answered almost without hesitation, Senior knows that my Xianxia Lu has branches in all 9 provinces of the hidden Immortal continent. Although my Yu province's Xianxia Lu may be different from the Jin province's Xianxia Lu, I can guarantee that Senior knows that my Xianxia Lu has branches in all 9 provinces of the hidden Immortal continent. However, Junior can guarantee that all the common spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits in Yu province can be found in my Xianxia Lu. Moreover, no matter if it's 100-year-old, 500-year-old or 1,000-year-old spiritual herb, they all have a price. All the spiritual herbs in Yu province. No matter how old they are, your Xianxia Lu has them all? Xiao Hua asked with a smile that wasn't a smile. 307 hesitated for a moment. Junior is only talking about common spiritual herbs. If it's especially rare, then Senior needs to make an appointment in advance. How much is 1,000-year-old desolate everlasting grass worth? Xiao Hua probed. Here. 307 wasn't in a hurry to answer. Instead, he pointed his hand. A jade box flew out from the starlight and landed in front of Xiao Hua. Senior, take a look first. Xiao Hua naturally took a look and nodded. That's right. Tell me how much is it worth? 18 upper-grade primordial stones. 307's crisp voice fell into Xiao Hua's ears. Xiao Hua finally understood why the person who made the deal with him would rather try his luck in the Star Palace than come to the Sky One Star Palace to look for desolate everlasting grass. What about the 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass? Xiao Hua closed the jade box in his hand and asked. Chapter 3261. Stunned, 301 stuttered. 10 years old desolate everlasting grass? Senior, you're not wrong, right? What can 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass do? Didn't you say that Xianxia Lu has everything? You can trade spirit herbs of any age? Xiao Hua smiled. This desolate everlasting grass isn't considered rare, right? Since there are 1,000-year-old ones, why aren't there 10-year-old ones? But 301 hesitated, then smiled. Senior, are you sure you're not looking for trouble? This is the first time I've heard of someone coming to my Xianxia Lu to search for 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass. Humph, Xiao Hua snorted and said lightly. Xianxia Lu opens its doors to welcome guests, so naturally we have to guess what our guests are thinking. In the past, no one wanted 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass, but that doesn't mean there won't be any now or in the future. Yes, you're right. 301 immediately bowed and said, Senior, please wait a moment. Then, 301's figure disappeared from Xiao Hua's sight and only returned after a full 5 minutes. He said with a smile, Senior, I've made you wait for a long time. It's indeed my negligence. My Xianxia Lu's 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass costs half a low-grade primordial stone. This is clearly marked, and I only remembered the older ones. These, I'm really sorry, please forgive me. Oh, half a low-grade primordial stone? Xiao Hua rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. 301 smiled and said, 1,000-year-old desolate everlasting grass costs 18 upper-grade primordial stones, but that's because it's old enough. A 10-year-old desolate everlasting grass. To be honest, it's only the price of 1 desolate everlasting grass seed. My Xianxia Lu has always been fair in our prices, so I don't dare to ask for more. What about other spirit herbs? Xiao Hua asked. Of course they're ordinary. 301 was clearly prepared. Ordinary spirit herbs and fruits that are less than 20 years old are all this price. Okay, how many 10-year-old spirit herbs and fruits does your Xianxia Lu have? I want a portion of all of them. Xiao Hua immediately shouted. 307's body trembled slightly. His face was full of confusion. He opened his mouth as if to ask something, but when he thought of Xianxia Lu's rules, he closed his mouth. Then he held the star token in his hand and looked at it carefully for a moment. He opened his mouth and said, Senior, our Xianxia Lu has a total of 12,015 types of spirit herbs and fruits. If you want them all, you need to pay 60 mid-grade spirit stones. In addition, because the amount of spiritual herbs you purchased is too large, but the price is not high, Xianxia Lu will take 10% of the loss. That means that you will have to pay 66 mid-level spirit stones. So much. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. 307 immediately smiled and said, I'll let Senior know that these spiritual herbs that are 10 years old are not fully formed. To be honest, Xianxia Lu does not have any ready-made ones. If Senior wants it, we can immediately mobilize people. We can't even give it to Senior right now. This was where the 10% loss came from. Moreover, spiritual herbs that are 10 years old are originally the price of seeds. It's just that there are too many types, that's why the price of spirit stone seems high. No. Xiaohua shook his head. What I mean is, how can there be so many spiritual herbs and trees in Yuzhou? Haha, Senior doesn't refine spirit herbs, so you don't know the knack of it. 307 smiled and said, our hidden immortal continent is blessed with good fortune and is the head of the 3 continents. The vitality of heaven and earth is also incomparable to that of the other 2 continents. That's why any flower or tree can be soaked in vitality and grow into a spiritual herb. These 10,000 types of spiritual herbs were only discovered by us Confucian cultivators. There are many others that have not been discovered yet. Xianxia Lu has long collected all kinds of spiritual herbs for the sake of Senior's needs. On one hand, we sell them to sects that cultivate spiritual herbs. On the other hand, we cultivate some spiritual herbs that are not too old. After all, without waiting for 307 to finish, Xiaohua asked curiously, you specialize in selling spiritual herbs here? Yes, 307's answer made Xiaohua not know whether to laugh or cry. Spiritual herbs are originally one of the things sold on the first floor of Xianxia Lu. Forget it, Xiaohua waved his hand. Give me one of each of these spiritual herbs. Remember, I don't want more. You want all of them? 307 really hurt his brain. However, he also didn't dare to get angry and confirmed again. After waiting for Xiaohua to give a definite answer, 307 disappeared again. This time, he came back very quickly. In just a moment, he handed over a small Qianquan pouch to Xiaohua and said, Senior, here are 13,110 spiritual herbs. According to Senior, you need a total of 66 mid-grade primeval stones. In addition, because Senior bought a lot of spiritual herbs, my Xianxia Lu will gift you a jade eye scroll. Inside it, the classification and planting of these spiritual herbs are recorded in detail. Great! Xiaohua was so happy that he almost jumped up. In Xiaoyu continent, these spiritual herbs were very hard to find, let alone jade scrolls that recorded spiritual herbs. He didn't expect that in hidden Immortal continent, these things were practically given away for free. Xiaohua took the small Qianquan pouch and sent all these spiritual herbs into the space. He handed them over to Xiaogua. He took out a piece of high-grade primeval stone and handed it to 307. He smiled and said, You only need to give me 30 mid-grade primeval stones. The rest is your reward. Many thanks, Senior. 307 received the primeval stones and the small storage pouch. He was really beaming with joy. 4 mid-grade primeval stones. This was a reward that 307 had never seen before. Although the Senior in front of him was really a bit strange, he was really generous. What else does Senior need? After 307 put the 30 mid-grade primeval stones in Xiaohua's hand, he asked again. He already had a premonition that the Senior he met tonight was definitely a big spender. Sure enough, Xiaohua simply didn't hesitate and said, What materials does your Xianxia Lu have for refining tools? This time 307 smiled bitterly and said with a smile, Senior, if you always wanted to plant those 10,000 spiritual herbs yourself, Junior could still accept it. I would be very happy to recommend these spiritual herbs to Senior. But there are also close to 5,000 kinds of refining materials. Senior, you want some of each. But there's no use at all. Although my Xianxia Lu can earn some primeval stones, Junior still has to remind Senior. Good. Hearing this, Xiaohua threw over another mid-grade primeval stone without demur and said, That's right, young man. Take this primeval stone. You let this old man save primeval stones, so this old man will reward you with primeval stones. Many thanks, Senior. 307's heart really bloomed with joy, and Xiaohua also very much enjoyed the feeling of being so generous. Yes, in Xiaoyu continent, a mid-grade spirit stone really doesn't count for much, but here, it can actually be exchanged for a moment of loyalty from a green-clothed youth. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and said, You take out the details of these materials for me to see, or how many primeval stones the jade eyes costs, this old man will pay. These jade eyes aren't worth any primeval stones. 307 immediately took out one from his bosom. Junior will give one to Senior. Good. Xiao Hua took the jade eyes, used the clear eyes technique to look at it, and said the names and quantities of dozens of materials. In front of 307 stupefied eyes. He paid more than 10 high-grade primeval stones. Looking at 307's appearance, Xiao Hua's heart is really refreshed. These materials are considered common in hidden Immortal continent, but they are rare in Xiaoyu continent. Xiao Hua looked at them and was reluctant to part with them. On the contrary, hidden Immortal continent's rare materials are in Xiao Hua's space, so although he bought a lot of materials, the amount of primeval stones he spent was not much. Taking the high-grade primeval stones from Xiao Hua, 307 hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, Senior, Junior will tell Senior another piece of information. Recently, Copper Pillar Country is waging war. My Xianxia Lu recently obtained a batch of materials. The quantity and variety are very large, and it is said that there are also some rare materials. If Senior wants, Junior can help you make an exception. It only costs 10 top-grade primeval stones. See. Xiao Hua took a breath of cold air. He got so many materials, but only spent a dozen high-grade primeval stones, and what 307 said was 100 times more. And from what he said, the price of this batch of materials is not just one top-grade primeval stone. Xiao Hua looked up and down at 307's appearance. It did not seem like he was faking it. He only pondered for a moment, then clapped his hand, took out 10 top-grade primeval stones and 1 high-grade primeval stone, and handed them to 307. I'll leave it to you now. 307 looked at the high-grade primeval stones, his eyes shining, and slightly bit his lips. It is very obvious that this guy was moved by Xiao Hua's bribery again and again. However, he still resisted the urge to snatch it, smacking his somewhat dry mouth, and said in a low voice, Junior will try to make an exception for Senior, but Junior does not dare to guarantee the result. After all, the quantity of these materials is really too large. Also, I have to explain to Senior, these materials have not been purified. Senior may have to spend a lot of effort. No matter. Xiao Hua waved his hand, and these primeval stones all flew in front of 307, and said, I can rest assured with you handling things. What you did before, this old man saw, you can do it without restraint, whether it succeeds or not. This old man will remember it in his heart. As for the problem of the materials, you don't have to worry about it, as long as there is it. When 307 heard this, he was really happy, and with a grab of his hand, those primeval stones all went into a small Qianquan bag, and turned to leave. At this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly called out, That's right, give this old man a copy of the list of materials sold on the 2nd and 3rd floor of Xianxia Lu. Also, only you can come, don't bring anyone else. 307 was stunned, and immediately said respectfully, Many thanks for Senior's trust, this Junior understands. 307 knew very well in his heart that with Xiao Hua's generosity, as long as he told others, those with a higher rank than him would definitely take over, and he could not refuse, so he would not be able to get any benefits. With Xiao Hua's words, he could completely evade these people. Of course, when it came to giving benefits to others, 307 was already very familiar with it. Chapter 3262. Then, without even thinking about it, 307 took out a somewhat special jade eye from his bosom and respectfully handed it over to Xiao Hua again before turning around and leaving. After 307 left, Xiao Hua used the eye-clearing technique to carefully examine the jade eyes in his hand. There were many detailed descriptions inside. What was special was that after each description, there were 2 prices. One slightly higher and one slightly lower. It was obvious that this jade eyes was used by Xianxia Lu's own people, so the slightly lower price should be the lowest price. Sigh, being generous really has its benefits. Xiao Hua sighed as he looked. Although I gave 307 a few primeval stones for free, this Xiao saved more than just these few primeval stones. The large amount of refining materials that 307 mentioned. This Xiao Hua is looking forward to it. This time, 307 left for a little longer. Almost the time it took to eat a meal before returning. Xiao Hua carefully examined the jade eyes. 307's face was flushed red, as if he was very excited. The small Qianquan bag in his hand was different from before. It was much bigger, and its color was also a little yellow. Senior, upon seeing Xiao Hua, 307 immediately smiled. Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. This Qianquan bag contains the materials that Senior wants. Senior, please take a look and see if it suits your taste.
Okay.
Xiao Hua was also looking forward to it. He returned the jade eyes to 307 and took the Qianquan bag. After he scanned it with his divine perception, he was stunned. Then, a kind of unexpected ecstasy filled Xiao Hua's heart. This so-called Qianquan bag was more than 100 times bigger than the small Qianquan bag, and currently, the Qianquan bag was densely packed with countless, broken artifacts. Xiao Hua immediately understood the meaning of 307's words just now. Yes, these artifacts were broken, but the materials were still there. They only needed to spend some effort to refine the materials inside, and these materials were much better than the original ones that had not been refined. But the problem was, how to refine these artifacts? How much manpower and material resources would Zhai Xinglu spend to do this? Of course, Zhai Xinglu could also choose to repair these artifacts. Although it would take more effort, the exchange for more primeval stones would naturally be more. However, the problem with this method was that Zhai Xinglu had to have enough weapon refiners and Hidden Immortal Continent had to have enough cultivators to purchase these Dharma weapons. It was undeniable that Zhai Xinglu had the capital to do so. But now that Haotian Taoism was in decline, would there be so many cultivators coming to purchase these Dharma weapons? Zhai Xinglu's only chance was to sell these magical weapons to a country that relied on Taoism. The problem was, could the Hidden Immortal Continent of Confucianism do this so openly? Therefore, it was really a waste of time and effort for Zhai Xinglu to earn enough primordial stones from these damaged artifacts. When Room 307 met Xiao Hua, it was easy to resolve this matter with a quick thought. Moreover, Zhai Xinglu did not earn much primeval stones, but it was definitely worth it. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua not being willing to see other people, the one who came over right now definitely wouldn't be 307. At the very least, the contents of this Qianquan bag had already expressed Zhai Xinglu's intentions. These damaged magic tools were of little value to others, but to Xiao Hua, they were absolutely treasures. Inside the space, the green-robed Xiao Hua had now gone through 100 years of refining the wishful steel rod. At this time, his refining level was definitely at the level of a master. Repairing these Dharma weapons could be said to be a piece of cake. Although it would take some time and delay the green-robed Xiao Hua's comprehension of cultivation methods and secret techniques, Xiao Hua believed that the green-robed Xiao Hua could not always comprehend cultivation methods. How could he not exercise his muscles and bones? The balance between work and rest still needed to be done. As for whether the green-robed Xiao Hua had muscles and bones, that was not something Xiao Hua thought about. When Xiao Hua was pondering, 307 also looked at Xiao Hua with apprehension. Although Xiao Hua's appearance and expression were replaced by the stars and could not be seen clearly, this short period of pondering actually made 307 feel incomparably long. This matter was far simpler than 307 thought. He thought that he would have to bend the rules a little. Who knew that as soon as he reported it, he immediately received a warm response from the steward. He did not need to spend a single low-grade primeval stone. Even the steward's reaction was the same as Xiao Hua's. He wanted to personally negotiate with Xiao Hua on behalf of 307. After 307 said Xiao Hua's words, the steward extinguished his thoughts. Looking at the 10 pieces of top-grade primeval stones in 307's hands, he hurriedly put these worthless primeval stones into his Qianquan bag and handed them to 307. Before 307 left, he even said that as long as this transaction was successful, 307 would be heavily rewarded. Little friend. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said with a smile, "These are not the materials you mentioned. Even if I wanted to use these, it would be troublesome." 307 hurriedly smiled. Yes, these are naturally not the real materials. But if Senior had someone to clean them up and refine them, the quality would be much better than ordinary materials. Besides, if not for the fact that the Bronze Pillar State is at war with the outside world, it would be impossible for my Zhai Xinglu to obtain so many broken magic tools. Especially since this batch of materials has not been included in the list that Senior saw earlier. If other seniors saw it, I'm afraid the price would not be this. Xiao Hua originally wanted to bargain for a bit, but 307's last sentence moved him. That's right, if others knew that there was such a large batch of damaged magic tools, even if they didn't have the heart to buy them, under the careful investigation, they could still raise the price too high. Since these magic tools were useful to him, why should he be stingy? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua threw the Chenkuan bag into the void and took out the magic tools that were as big as a small mountain. After instructing the green-robed Xiao Hua, he hurriedly retreated and returned the Chenkuan bag to 307 without even looking at the green-robed Xiao Hua's face. Hiss. 307 was immediately dumbfounded. This is a Chenkuan bag. This senior, actually also has a Chenkuan bag. And even a Chenkuan bracelet. Thinking that Xiao Hua actually had a Chenkuan bag that was of a much higher grade than the ordinary small Chenkuan bag, and even a Chenkuan bracelet, 307's eyes once again flashed with self-satisfaction, a kind of pride at his sharp eyes. Many thanks, senior. 307 took the empty Chenkuan bag and carefully put it away. He then reached into his bosom and took out a triangular token with a star engraved on it and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying respectfully, "This is my Jianghu Lu's VIP token. In the future, senior can use this token to enjoy a 2% discount on all of my Jianghu Lu services." Only a 2% discount. Xiao Hua raised his brows and smiled. But thinking about it, he had only spent 10 supreme-grade primeval stones. This was really a far cry from the hundreds of supreme-grade primeval stones in Xiaoyu continent. Yes, senior. 307 smiled obsequiously. If senior spends more primeval stones at my Jianghu Lu in the future, you will naturally change to a higher-grade token. Oh, that's right. If senior wants to participate in my Jianghu Lu's auction, you don't have to pay any fees with this token. Even if it's the commission for the auction, you can still charge less. This old man understands. Xiao Hua casually put away the token and said, "This old man indeed wants to participate in the auction later. Now that there's not much time left, take this old man to the 3rd floor." "Yes, Junior understands," 307 said and waved the star token in his hand. A star path appeared in front of Xiao Hua, extending to both sides. 307 stepped onto the star path and said, "Senior, please." Junior will take senior to the 3rd floor now. But when he saw Xiao Hua step onto the star path, he reminded him, "Senior, the materials used to make these scrolls on the 1st floor are not bad. If senior has no use for them, you can buy them and give them to your juniors." Hearing this, Xiao Hua's eyes turned. He thought of the item in the hands of Yu Clan's 7th uncle and Mo Genli. He hadn't been able to find a suitable person to ask about it. This was a good opportunity, so he smiled and said, "This old man has already made some transactions with some immortal friends in other star palaces. This old man doesn't have many juniors, so this is enough. However, this old man wants to ask you, what's the difference between these things and the ones outside? What's the difference between the scrolls made here?" 307 saw that Xiao Hua had already bought them, so he naturally knew that Xiao Hua wouldn't buy them again. But how could he not say these words to get closer to Xiao Hua? Taking advantage of the opportunity to go to the 3rd floor, 307 replied, "Senior must know that scrolls are things that carry the noble qi of Confucian cultivators. Its use is different from imperial tools. The quality of the material and the quality of the array have a great impact on the quality of the imperial tool. But scrolls are different. Ordinary brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone can be made into a very good scroll. Everything depends on the refinement of the true qi in the Confucian cultivator's chest. However, after my star-picking tower scholars' research, we found that the 4 treasures of the study, which usually don't seem to be the key, still play a certain role in writing scrolls. Good materials, or rather, materials made by specially trained scholars, would innately possess a certain amount of noble spirit. After being written by a Confucian scholar into a scroll, it would be easier to trigger the noble spirit and even increase the effects. The materials made by ordinary people require even more noble qi to trigger the noble qi in the scroll. I won't hide it from senior. My star-picking tower 2nd floor has some specialized scrolls made by scholars. They don't need any noble qi to trigger them. As long as the person who owns the scroll opens it, the noble qi inside will immediately rush out. Senior, think about it. These scrolls that ordinary people can use, if you use the materials that senior sells outside, can you write them? Oh, so that's how it is. Xiaohua completely understood. These scrolls were actually the Dao sect's yellow talismans. The difference was talisman paper and Xian paper, talisman pen and ink pen. Of course, the scrolls and yellow talismans not only had different names, but also different methods of use. The scrolls seemed to be able to be used by anyone, but the yellow talismans needed to be triggered by true qi. The scroll's function was somewhat similar to jade talismans. The two refining methods, the Dao sect focused on using talismans to draw in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, while the Confucian cultivators focused on their own noble qi. This was also related to the difference in the true meaning of cultivation of the two sections. As for the advantages and disadvantages of the two, or even distinguishing which one used which one, there probably wouldn't be any results. Chapter 3263. Xiaohua actually wants to ask how this scroll is made, but he has already seen the jade eyes in 301's hand and there is no record of this, so he doesn't dare to ask rashly. Of course, if Senior doesn't want to buy these materials, then you can also buy some ready-made scrolls on the second floor. Tonight is the Hungry Ghost Festival, the night of 100 ghosts. My Zhaixing Lu's scrolls are the nemesis of these evil spirits. As long as you have a scroll with you, no malicious spirit would dare to approach you. Room 307 found another topic to talk about. Xiaohua waves his hand. If it's normal, I will also come to pick some, but I'm afraid there isn't enough time today. Wait until after the auction. It won't be too late for me to pick then. 301 doesn't dare to say any more and says with a smile. That's good. Junior is afraid that Senior won't be able to buy everything on this trip. Alas, we male cultivators are the most careless. Who would think so much? If we go back and people say, that won't be good. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughs loudly. No. No one will dare to say that I forgot one thing. Xiaohua is laughing when he suddenly stops, causing 301 to be stunned. He says anxiously, what did Senior forget? I wonder if Junior can help? Alas, two things. Xiaohua smiles bitterly. If I didn't hear you mention it now, I really would have forgotten. 301 sighs in relief and pats his chest. No matter, as long as it is related to my Zhaixing Lu, Junior can help Senior. Don't say it so early. Xiaohua shakes his head. If it's simple, how can I not remember? It's just too difficult. 301 smiles. Senior, please tell me. Although Junior is small and weak, Junior has Zhaixing Lu behind him. Within Yuzhou, there are not many things that Zhaixing Lu can't do. And, since that's the case, then my first difficulty is a detailed map of the hidden Immortal continent. Xiaohua says somewhat gloomily because he didn't see any record of this in 301's jade eyes. Hiss. 301 inhales a breath of cold air and says with a bitter smile. Senior is really making things difficult for Junior. There are tens of thousands of countries in the 9 prefectures of the hidden Immortal continent. If this Junior wants a detailed map of them, it is indeed troublesome. Senior, why don't you talk about the second problem first? The moment Xiaohua heard, he unwittingly sighed and said with a smile. The first one is already so difficult, the second one is even harder. I have a Junior who has failed in his studies and wants to find a new path. I heard that Taoism is easy to cultivate and that there is no need to study hard every day. He wants to ask me for a Taoist cultivation method. Tell me, where can I find it for him? That's why I came to Zhaixing Lu today for this troublesome matter. 307's face was as bitter as if he had eaten Chinese gold thread. He smacked his lips and smiled apologetically. Senior, to be honest, it's not like Zhaixing Lu has never seen Taoist techniques before. However, it is an ironclad rule of the 3 continents that we cannot sell low-level and high-level Taoist techniques. We, Zhaixing Lu, do not dare to touch it. You. At this point, 307 hesitated for a moment and lowered his voice. Junior has occasionally heard from others that there is a kind of underground auction in Copper Pillar Country. It is similar to my Zhaixing Lu's auction. However, the things inside are even stranger and more bizarre. Ordinary people cannot enter at all. Junior feels that the low-level Taoist techniques that you want can be found there. Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands. He had already understood that the so-called underground auction should be Dawn Rain Continent's secret auction. The things inside definitely wouldn't follow the rules and regulations of the auction. Not to mention the Dao sect's low-level cultivation methods. Even the high-level cultivation methods would be available in this auction. However, Xiaohua also knew that what 307 said was correct. It was impossible for an ordinary person to know about this secret. 307 might have only heard about it from others. It was unlikely that he would be able to obtain this information from 307. As for the map that Senior mentioned, 307 opened his mouth again. Junior will help you ask Junior's steward. Perhaps they have some ideas. Good, Xiaohua was delighted and said. As long as there is a map, this old man will reward you greatly. Senior can go ahead and participate in the auction. After the auction, you can come to Star Palace and look for Junior by name. 307 replied. Of course, Junior does not dare to guarantee that it will succeed. Hee, Xiaohua laughed. Let's not talk about anything else. Help this old man purchase these Confucian techniques from Zhaixing Lu, and also the prescriptions for these immortal medicines. And also the refining methods for these imperial tools. With the things that this old man purchased today, I presume that your steward will not ignore this old man's request? 307 was overjoyed again and hurriedly nodded. He silently remembered that he had misunderstood Xiaohua's meaning. Xiaohua's original intention was to get some basic Confucian techniques and refining methods for reference. 307 thought that Xiaohua had purposely purchased so many common techniques and methods to help him. How could he not be grateful? In just a moment, Xiaohua had collected a large pile of jade eyes, but what he spent was merely some high-grade primordial stones. Xiaohua originally wanted to see if there was anything else he could take advantage of, but 307 smiled and said, Senior, the time is already late. Although the auction has been postponed for 2 hours, some immortal friends have already entered. If Senior has the heart to go take a look, you still have to make some preparations first. Of course, what else does Senior want to purchase? Feel free to tell this Junior and this Junior will prepare it for you. It won't be too late for you to come back after the auction. Make some preparations. Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled, but he could not ask. He nodded and said, That's good. Help this old man find some strange and unknown items on the 3rd floor. As long as it is something that others do not want, or something that your Zhaixing Lu cannot identify, leave some for this old man. This old man likes to hunt for strange things the most. Hee, Senior may be disappointed. Hearing this, 307 understood that Xiaohua was not talking about the items listed in the jade eyes. Thus he smiled and said, My Zhaixing Lu's items all have clear origins. Anything of unknown origin will not appear. But it is a strange item. Junior will help you take a look. Thank you for everything. Xiaohua nodded. Like I said, this old man will thank you greatly. Yes, Junior understands. 307 waved his hand, and another star path appeared under Xiaohua's feet. He bowed respectfully and said, Senior, please. Once you leave here, you will reach the Star Palace. Forgive Junior for not seeing you off. Thank you for your hard work. Xiaohua knew that 307 would be busy again, so he casually returned the greeting. He stepped onto the star path, and his figure shot out like a shooting star. Seeing Xiaohua's figure disappear, 307 hurriedly turned around. He still had not handed over the supreme-grade primordial stones that Xiaohua gave earlier. This was the biggest transaction of the night. Moreover, the item Xiaohua wanted was really strange. 307 had no choice but to rack his brains to deal with it. Xiaohua left Zhaixing Lu's Sky 1 Star Palace, revealing his true appearance. He did not look around, and swaggered towards his own Hong Siliu. His soul sense had already been released. Within the Star Palace, there were some restrictions on divine sense and Buddhist sense. They could not go too far and some places could go far but they could not stay for long. However, soul sense did not have any restrictions. Xiaohua carefully observed for a moment, but did not see anything strange. Only then did he relax and leave. But just a few dozen feet away from Hong Siliu, across from Xiaohua, a thin and tall young man in embroidered clothes also hurriedly walked towards Hong Siliu. I owe this person. Seeing that person walk in front of Hong Siliu's star cluster and take out a silver star token, but the star cluster did not react. Clearly, there was no one in the star cluster. The young man in embroidered clothes showed a disappointed expression. Xiao Hua originally wanted to slip past the young man in embroidered clothes and enter the star palace after he left. But when he was less than 2 feet away from the young man in embroidered clothes, he saw the anxiety on the young man's face. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Immortal, are you looking for Hong Siliu's master?" "Correct." The young man in embroidered clothes raised his eyebrows, clearly on guard. His tone was a bit cold, but this matter seems to have nothing to do with fellow Immortal, right? Hee, how could it have nothing to do with me? Xiao Hua took out his star token, and a cloud of stardust shot out from the star cluster and enveloped Xiao Hua. Similarly, another cloud of stardust enveloped the young master in embroidered clothes. Xiao Hua chuckled and said, "Fellow Immortal, please enter." The two of them disappeared into Hong Silu's star palace. Sigh, "Fellow Immortal, please enter." After entering the star palace, the young man in embroidered clothes sighed. "I originally didn't want to meet fellow Immortal with my original appearance, but I had no choice." Hee, fellow Immortal Fu, this is fate." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "I am Xiao Hua, a Taoist loose cultivator. I also didn't want you to see my original appearance, but since we met outside the Star Palace, why should I hide anything? I wonder why fellow Immortal Fu is looking for me? Oh, I am Fu Jiwen, a Confucian cultivator. Greetings, fellow Taoist Xiao." The young man in embroidered clothes bowed and said, "I have always heard that Taoist cultivators are stingy, forgetting righteousness in the face of profit. They have always been the type to kill people and rob them. But I didn't expect fellow Taoist Xiao to be so magnanimous, even more open and upright than a Confucian cultivator like me." "Oh, fellow Taoist?" Xiao Hua was startled and asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist Fu has also practiced Taoist cultivation techniques?" "It can't be considered practice," Fu Jiwen replied. "I have only dabbled in it a little, and am very curious about Taoist magic power and divine abilities." Upon hearing that Fu Jiwen also had Taoist cultivation, Xiao Hua's impression of him unconsciously improved. Naturally, he also knew why he changed his mind when he was just about to miss the opportunity. "Young Master Fu, I wonder why you have come to find me?" Xiao Hua asked. "If there is anything I can help with, feel free to tell me." Chapter 3264. Hee, I heard that fellow Taoist Xiao collects strange things of unknown origin. I've already come here twice, but I haven't encountered it yet. If I don't encounter it this time, I'll leave the Star Palace." Fu Jiwen said with a smile. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, "Isn't that right? My Tao sect emphasizes fate. Didn't we encounter it this time? What strange things does young Master Fu have?" To others, it's naturally strange, but to fellow Taoist Xiao, it may not be so. As Fu Jiwen spoke, he took out a spoon-like thing from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. "Fellow Taoist, please take a look." Xiao Hua scanned it with his divine sense, but didn't take it. He shook his head and said, "This is a magic treasure of my Tao sect. It really isn't anything strange. Does young Master Fu have anything else?" Immediately, Fu Jiwen took out a few more things, either jade slips or old yellow talismans. To Xiao Hua, these things were really common and didn't attract him in the slightest. "Forget it," Xiao Hua waved his hand and said with a smile. "Young Master Fu, these are all things of my Tao sect. I presume that young Master obtained them when you obtained the Tao sect's inheritance, right? These aren't what I want. What I want is something that young Master doesn't know of its origin and doesn't know what it is." "Sigh, then it's difficult." Fu Jiwen scratched his head. "I only have these here. Actually, as long as it's strange, it's fine. It doesn't have to have a bright appearance." Xiao Hua was naturally disappointed. Fu Jiwen suddenly thought of something. He stretched out his hand and took out a white bone joint from his sleeve and handed it to Xiao Hua. "This is something that I've been playing with since I was young. It seems to have been picked up from somewhere when I was young. It looks like an ordinary white bone, but it's also abnormally sparkling and translucent. I know that it's strange, but this thing, it's just strange, nothing else. I don't know if it's the strange thing that fellow Taoist Xiao mentioned. Bone joint? The joint of a soul cultivator. Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the joint, and a huge wave immediately set off in his heart. He was very familiar with this thing. It was the joint of the millions of soul cultivators of Meng Mountain in Xiaoyu continent. Although Xiao Hua didn't use his soul sense to examine it, he was almost certain. How is this possible? This was clearly the boundary of the 3 continents. How can he have the bones of a soul cultivator? Xiao Hua was puzzled. Because of the physique of a soul cultivator, they can't leave the millions of Meng Mountains. If he left, he would end up like Xiao Mao, unable to cultivate as a soul cultivator. Then how did this bone end up here? Perhaps there are others like me? Fellow Taoist Xiao. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't say anything, Fu Jiwen was a little embarrassed. He retracted his hand and said with a smile, "So I'll say it? Although this is a strange item, it may not be of interest to you, fellow Taoist." There's no rush. How could Xiao Hua allow Fu Jiwen to retract his joints? He laughed and said, "Let this Xiao take a look first." Okay, both of them were currently blocked by the stardust, so they couldn't see each other's expressions. Xiao Hua did his best to calm his tone, and in a hurry, Fu Jiwen also didn't discover anything from Xiao Hua's tone. Xiao Hua's soul sense entered the bone. With just a glance, his little heart that hadn't been excited for a long time started to beat wildly. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said with a smile, "This strange item is exactly what this Xiao wants. Young Master Fu, name a price. If it's not outrageous, this Xiao will take it." Phew! Fu Jiwen was still inferior to Xiao Hua. When he heard that Xiao Hua wanted it, he let out a sigh of relief. Then he waved his hand and said, "Since this item has entered fellow Taoist Zhao's eyes, then please name a price. As long as it's suitable, this one will definitely part with it." Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. This item was a priceless treasure to him, but if the price was too high, Xiao Hua was afraid that Fu Jiwen would ask for a ridiculous price. "How about this? This Xiao offers 10 mid-grade origin stones. What do you think?" Xiao Hua bid, but Fu Jiwen hesitated instead. Seeing that Fu Jiwen didn't speak, Xiao Hua asked curiously, "Young Master Fu, is this price high or low? You should name a price. The auction is about to start. This Xiao doesn't have time to dawdle with you." "Sigh, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Xiao." Fu Jiwen simply told the truth. 10 mid-grade origin stones is far beyond this one's expectations. This item is nothing but a toy for this one. Then why are you hesitating? Xiao Hua was also interested. Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly, but this one hopes to exchange for some high-grade origin stones, but fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't like it. So this one is very conflicted. If I give this item to fellow Taoist for 10 mid-grade origin stones, this one will enter the auction, and will definitely return empty-handed. Simple, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "How many high-grade origin stones do you want?" 30? No, 25 is enough, Fu Jiwen said hurriedly. Although he couldn't see his expression, Xiao Hua already understood Fu Jiwen's anxiety outside earlier. Then 50 high-grade origin stones. Xiao Hua didn't even think and took out a small Qiankuan bag and handed it to Fu Jiwen. "Ah?" Fu Jiwen stared blankly and didn't dare to take the small Qiankuan bag. Xiao Hua flung his hand and the small Qiankuan bag landed in front of Fu Jiwen. He smiled and said, "Although you aren't of my Dao sect, you still cultivate Dao techniques. This one can't just watch fellow Taoist in trouble and not help. This item is also worth this many origin stones in this one's eyes. You and I are willing to make a deal. It's very fair." "Haha, well said, fellow Taoist Xiao." Fu Jiwen heard and laughed loudly. He bowed and said, "This one and my humble wife thank fellow Taoist Xiao for the origin stones. If fate wills it in the future, this one will invite fellow Taoist to my humble home for a chat." Forget it. Xiao Hua helped Fu Jiwen up and said, "Young Master Fu, hurry up and go. The auction is about to begin. You and I both need to prepare." "Indeed." When he heard the auction, Fu Jiwen hurriedly turned around, This one still needs to let Zhai Xinglu verify my qualifications to bid. Qualifications to bid? Xiao Hua understood. This was probably the token that 307 mentioned that allowed one to enter the auction site. Since he had the token to enter the auction site, there was no need to rush. When Fu Jiwen's stardust-like figure disappeared, Xiao Hua couldn't wait any longer and took out the bone. He impatiently immersed his soul sense into the bone. He was even more anxious and curious than when he was dual cultivating. See, it really is this item. Xiao Hua's soul sense clearly saw the contents of the soul cultivator's words and the diagram of the soul treasure. He waved his hand again and took out the bone ball from Million Meng Mountains from the space. Xiao Hua had already examined this ball of bones before. This ball of bones was divided into 18 layers. Each layer was composed of tens of thousands of tiny bone particles. Although the outermost layer looked like a ball of bones, when the bone particles moved slightly, they formed a faintly discernible skeleton. When Xiao Hua met Grandmaster Qin in the soul refining cave, he discovered the shaman code. However, he didn't dare to rashly drag this bone ball into the heaven ring to examine it. Moreover, after many unforeseen events in Million Meng Mountains, he didn't have the opportunity to discover the origin of this bone ball. After returning from Million Meng Mountains, Xiao Hua returned the bone snake to Xiao Mao. Although he kept the bone ball, he didn't pay attention to it. What he didn't expect was that in this hidden immortal continent, 100 years later, in this inconspicuous bronze pillar country, he found the green seal text to control the bone ball and the origin of this bone ball in the hands of Fu Jiwen. It turned out that this bone ball was a soul treasure of soul cultivators. It had the same origin as the soul falling lamp and the nether passage. The function of the soul falling lamp was to attack and kill. Its green seal text could directly communicate with the aura of Hutu Great God. Those few second-grade sword transformation swordsmen couldn't resist the soul-falling lamp at all. The nether passage used the bloodline of Hutu Great God's descendant to connect directly to the netherworld. The nether passage was the medium to condense the power of the green seal text. As for this bone ball, it was called the soul bridge, a soul treasure used to communicate with the souls of others. The records in Fu Jiwen's bone ball were very clear. Although the soul cultivators of Million Meng Mountains had been cultivating soul arts for generations, they still didn't have a complete understanding of the mysterious souls. They didn't even know where the so-called 9 heavens of spirit origin and the mysterious dark clouds were. Or in other words, they knew it was there, but they couldn't sense it. Even with the soul cultivation technique of 9 heavens of spirit origin and the Magus Codex, these soul cultivators of Million Meng Mountains couldn't cultivate their nascent divinities in the layers of spirit heavens like Xiao Hua. Since he couldn't touch his own soul, the souls of others couldn't be touched either. There was no need to talk about attacking and killing. He only needed to take out the soul-falling lamp and attack like a whirlwind. But how could they communicate, repair, and other actions that could help the soul? The soul bridge was such a soul treasure. The owner of the soul bridge could control the soul bridge through the green seal text. Through the soul bridge, they could touch the souls of others, and then touch the heavenly runes and earthly deeds outside of the soul. A powerful soul warrior could even break through these heavenly runes and earthly deeds and enter the souls of others. Excellent! Xiao Hua finished reading a few lines in one glance, then clapped his hands and praised. With this item, Wuxia's soul can be repaired. But, I still need to comprehend this bone ball more, and see if I can find the green seal text that can truly repair the soul. Especially, if I can find the green seal text that can revive people, that would be even better. Of course, Xiao Hua also understood that this item was just a soul treasure that could be used as a medium for communication. If he wanted to repair the soul, or even reach a higher level of reviving the dead, he still had a long way to go. But, this bone ball seems a little strange. Xiao Hua knew that now wasn't the time to look at it carefully. Moreover, he had just thrown a pile of junk to green-robed Xiao Hua, so he didn't have the heart to trample on him. So he carefully stored the bone ball into his space, and waited until he had time to study it. Chapter 3265. When Xiao Hua walked out of the Star Palace, he was still extremely bewildered. He couldn't help but think to himself, isn't this so-called soul just the mysterious dark cloud in my mind? Didn't I see it clearly from the start? Moreover, other people's souls. I can also see them, right? Why can't any soul cultivator see them? Since I can't see them, What kind of 9 heaven spirit are they cultivating? But that's right. Ming didn't seem to have mentioned 9 heaven spirit to me. Xiao Hua lowered his head to look at the star path beneath his feet. The brilliant starlight was truly enchanting. Strands of brilliance flickered with confusing colors, obscuring one's eyes. Even Elder Wu of Hutu village didn't mention it. Could it be that they really can't see it? Only I can see it? As for the 9 heaven spirit they speak of, could it be like the Dao sex cultivation method? Just a realm? And this realm just happens to match the situation inside the mysterious dark cloud? Right, Dama I. Suddenly, Xiao Hua had some understanding. The soul strands he used were all from his Dharma eye. If he could see the shape of the mysterious dark cloud, then it could only be the effect of the Dharma eye imprint. Even his mind being able to see his own dark cloud was definitely the effect of the Dharma eye. What's the origin of the Dharma eye? Simple. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua thought of the little white dragon. I just need to pull out the little white dragon and ask it, won't that be enough? Sigh, that won't work. The little white dragon itself is a soul essence. A few days ago, it even discovered the seal of the full sky. If it can't see it, how can it sense it? It can't be counted. Senior. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking about it, a voice sounded. Xiao Hua raised his head to look. It was Xiao Jian standing there cautiously, his face full of admiration. Lu Yi's face carried a trace of excitement as he accompanied him. Only Xianxia was still as calm as ever. You're back. Xiao Hua stopped thinking and smiled. Xiao Jian hurriedly replied, Yes, now that the auction is near, many cultivators in the Star Palace have closed their stalls. Junior and the others didn't know about Senior's arrangements, but we were afraid that Senior would be worried, so we hurriedly came back. How could Xiao Hua not know that Xiao Jian wanted to go to the auction? He asked again. How was it? How's your harvest? Taoist priest. Before Xiao Jian could speak, Lu Yi, who was beside him, addressed him as Taoist priest. Although he was not as respectful as Xiao Jian's senior, there was a sense of intimacy between them. I found a jade eye from our Taoist sect. Taoist priest Xiao said that there was a basic technique inside. When Xiao Jian heard this, he hurriedly looked around and glared at Lu Yi. It was obvious that he was blaming Lu Yi for revealing the secret at the wrong time. When Lu Yi saw this, he hurriedly stuck out his tongue and didn't say anything else. He was so happy that he forgot about what he had just said when he made the deal. Ah, little guy, you're really lucky. Xiao Hua stared blankly at first, then immediately felt happy for Lu Yi. Not only was this little fellow's fate in immortality extremely good, even his quick-wittedness was not something that others could compare to. These jade eyes were definitely obtained by him by relying on his glib tongue. However, Xiao Hua was immediately confused. He looked at Xiao Jian and asked, Your divine sense can see the things in the jade eyes? Yes. Xiao Jian hurriedly replied, Junior has some secret techniques for the use of divine sense. They can be used in the same way as the divine sense techniques of Confucian cultivators. Oh, I understand. Xiao Hua said with a smile, Bring the things over. This old man will first take a look at them for Brother Lu. If it's possible, this old man can give you some pointers. Thank you, Taoist priest. Lu Yi was wild with joy. He hurriedly took out a dozen small cosmos bags from his bosom and handed them over to Xiao Hua. The things are inside. This little one is afraid that it's not safe to keep them in my bosom. And, looking at Lu Yi's slightly stingy appearance, Xiao Hua felt that it was very familiar. He took the bags with a smile and sent them into the space. Immediately, Xiao Jian and Xianxia also took out a dozen small cosmos bags and gave them to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't look at them carefully and accepted them. It's really good to have someone to help me. Xiao Hua thought in his heart, if it was me, I wouldn't be able to do so many things in such a short time. Finally, Xiao Jian took out a small cosmos bag and handed it over to Xiao Hua. Senior, this is the spiritual grass that hasn't been traded yet. And take it. Return it to me after the auction. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said. A grateful expression appeared on Xiao Jian's face. He hurriedly bowed and said, Xiao Jian thanks Senior. Oh right, take out 30% and give it to Xianxia and Lu Yi. Xiao Hua thought of something again and said with a smile, They don't need to go to the auction. Take those spiritual grass and walk around. Maybe Brother Lu can find something good. Yes, Xiao Jian didn't hesitate and gave 30% of the spiritual grass to Lu Yi. However, Lu Yi was somewhat hesitant and said in a low voice, Taoist priest, this little one can't see what's inside the small cosmos bags. What if I'm cheated by someone else? Ha ha, Xiaohua laughed loudly. He swung his sleeves and walked away in large strides. As he walked, he said, In this world, there's nothing that the heart can't see through. As long as you want to, spiritual sense and other things can't replace your heart. This. Yuanya was confused, but Lu Yi's eyes lit up. He seemed to understand what Xiaohua was talking about. At the end of the star path was a wide Milky Way. Inside the Milky Way, the stars were shining brightly. The dots of starlight were like ripples in the water, looking very realistic. Above the Milky Way, there was an extremely majestic rainbow bridge. This rainbow bridge had 3 colors, and many people dressed in brocade robes and Confucian robes were stepping on it. The end of this rainbow bridge wasn't the opposite bank of the galaxy. Instead, it was the disc-like bright moon above the galaxy. Damn it, this star-picking tower is even more imposing than my Dao sect. Xiaohua looked at the grand occasion in front of him. I'm afraid that any ordinary auction in the Dawn Rain continent wouldn't have such a majestic aura. Only the Yuanying auction in Haoming City could compare with it. Confucian cultivators, oh Confucian cultivators, it's really not what this Xiao imagined. The galaxy naturally didn't appear out of thin air. Many small shuttle-shaped boats were anchored at the edge of the galaxy. The boats were heading towards the rainbow bridge that crossed the galaxy. Xiaohua brought Xiao Jian to the front of a boat and said with a smile, The moon is bright and the stars are rare guests returning late. The boat is unmanned. The night rain is continuous, and the spring clothes are wet. Can the boatman cross? Ha ha ha. A hearty laugh sounded, and a blue brilliance flashed on the boat like a comet. A middle-aged Confucian cultivator appeared on the boat, and the clear voice of reciting poetry rushed into Xiaohua's ears like falling rain. The bright moon is bright and the stars are gathered. Where can a bosom friend be found? The rainbow bridge crosses the sky, and the boat ferries the fated ones. Oh, young Master Zhu? Seeing that the middle-aged Confucian cultivator in front of him wasn't an ordinary blue-clothed youth, Xiaohua stared blankly. A thoughtful expression flashed through his eyes, and he stepped forward and cupped his hands. Young Master is so free. The auction at Jianghu is about to begin. Young Master isn't going to the auction to entertain guests, but instead is here to welcome guests. This really makes me surprised. The auction will naturally be managed by the auction's host. This Zhu only needs to worry about the operation of the entire Jianghu. This Zhu doesn't care about the specifics. The middle-aged Confucian cultivator smiled and returned the greeting. Previously, I only saw fellow Immortal's unbending character in front of Jianghu, and now I see fellow Immortal's bright and beautiful chest. If fellow Immortal wasn't wearing Taoist robes, this Zhu would only think that fellow Immortal was a Confucian cultivator. If this Zhu wasn't waiting here, how would I know that fellow Immortal was hiding? I wouldn't dare. Xiaohua was secretly proud, but he waved his hand and said, It's all dog-tailed stuff. It can't enter the Hall of Elegance. Dog-tailed stuff. Hearing Xiaohua's words, the middle-aged Confucian cultivator unconsciously rubbed his nose. It seems, the dog-tailed stuff is me. However, looking at Xiaohua's smiling expression, the middle-aged Confucian cultivator didn't feel that Xiaohua was mocking him. Thus, he smiled and said, This one is Zhu Qing. Greetings to fellow Immortal. How should I address fellow Immortal? Oh, this one is a Taoist loose cultivator. Xiaohua. Xiaohua also didn't intend to hide anything, and answered truthfully. I wonder if young Master Zhu was waiting here. For this Xiao? Zhu Qing nodded. That's right. This Zhu really does have something to discuss with fellow Immortal Xiao. Xiaohua faintly smiled and shook his head. If young Master Zhu wants to be a peacemaker and make this Xiao lower his head, this Xiao feels that you and I have nothing in common. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earthware. This Xiao feels that there's nothing wrong with what I did. If they do anything, this Xiao isn't afraid of anything. I'll let them experience the thunderous might of my Taoist sect. Zhu Qing's face revealed a trace of astonishment. When Xiao Hua said those words, although his body didn't tremble and there wasn't any heaven-shaking domineering aura, Zhu Qing heard a kind of incomparable confidence from his mouth. He couldn't help but look up and down at Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, he really couldn't see where Xiao Hua's confidence came from. Actually, at this time, he really wanted to talk to Xiao Hua about young Master Duanmu. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, how could he say these words? Fellow Immortal Xiao, please rest assured. This Zhu isn't a lobbyist for the Duanmu family. As for what this Zhu has to say, please come on board. Zhu Qing thought for a moment and said with a smile, this Zhu will send fellow Immortal Xiao to participate in the auction. Let's talk while we walk. See. Xiao Hua stared blankly. He immediately thought of the pile of magic tools in his space and said inwardly, damn it, this guy can't be going back on his word, right? Or maybe he sensed something from the magic tools? After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Hua nodded. However, he pointed his hand and said, thank you for your trouble, young Master Zhu. However, where is this Zhao's junior? Junior? Zhu Qing originally had some understanding. Now that he heard Xiao Hua personally admit it, his heart truly understood. The youth in front of him was definitely not a youth in the prime of his youth. This fellow Immortal can go to another ferry, Zhu Qing replied with a smile. My Zhai Xinglu's ferry can only carry 2 people. Moreover, every cultivator who boards the ferry must be qualified to participate in the auction. If you don't have enough primeval stones, you can't board the ferry. My Zhai Xinglu doesn't welcome these cultivators to participate in the auction. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.